I thought hitting rock bottom was getting fired, until my landlord knocked on my door at 8:12 at night. He admitted my sister had bribed him $1,000 to void my lease the very week my husband was gone. But the worst part wasn't sleeping in my car. It was the moment they looked at me with terror, realizing that I was the only person who could legally kick them out of their own lives. My name is Scarlett Ross. If you had asked me a week ago who I was, I would have given you the standard, rehearsed answer that makes sense at dinner parties. I would have told you I was 34 years old. I would have told you I was a senior customer success manager at Bright Hollow Systems in Charlotte, North Carolina. I would have told you I was happily married to a man named Paul Henry, who is currently away on a contract job to build our savings, and that we were aggressively paying down debt to buy our first home. I would have told you I was safe. But safety is a lie we tell ourselves to sleep at night. Safety is a paycheck that clears every 2 weeks, until it does not. Safety is a lease with your signature on it, until someone with a little bit of cash decides your signature does not matter anymore. It started on a Tuesday morning at 9:30. The air conditioning in the Bright Hollow conference room was set to a temperature that felt designed to preserve dead bodies. I sat across from a woman from HR named Linda, whose last name I never bothered to learn, and my direct manager, Dave. Dave refused to look me in the eye. He was staring intensely at a smudge on the glass table, as if the secrets of the universe were hidden in that fingerprint. Linda did the talking. She used words like restructuring and redundancy and market shifts. She did not use the word fired. Corporate America has a way of sanitizing violence with vocabulary. They were not ruining my life. They were simply pivoting. My access to the building would be revoked in 1 hour. My health insurance would terminate at the end of the month. I walked out to the parking lot at 10:15 in the morning carrying a single cardboard box. It contained a succulent that was half dead, a framed photo of Paul and me from our wedding day, and a stapler that I am pretty sure I stole from my previous job. I sat in my Toyota Corolla and stared at the steering wheel. The silence was heavy. I felt the specific, uniquely American shame of losing your economic value. Without that badge to swipe me into the building, I was suddenly just a woman in a mid-range sedan with $300 in her checking account and a mortgage-sized hole in her chest. My phone buzzed. It was Paul. Heading into the site meeting. Signal is going to be spotty for the next 6 hours. Love you. I stared at the screen. Paul was 3 states away, working 12-hour shifts on a construction management project in Ohio. We needed the money. That was the irony that made my stomach turn. We were doing everything right. We were sacrificing our time together to build a future. He was gone so we could get ahead. I typed out a response, then deleted it. I typed it again. I just got let go. Restructuring. I waited. The bubbles appeared, then disappeared. Then a text came through. Oh my God. Scarlett, are you okay? I looked at the building behind me. Was I okay? No. I was terrified. We lived paycheck to paycheck, like nearly everyone else we knew. 1 missed check was a stumble. 2 was a fall. I am fine. I lied. I will figure it out. Focus on work. We need that contract bonus. I drove home to the duplex we rented on the outskirts of the city. It was not much, but it was ours. We paid $1,400 a month for the privilege of hearing our neighbors argue about reality television through the shared wall. But it had a front door and a place to park the car. For 2 days, I applied for jobs. I treated it like a sprint. I revamped my resume. I reached out to recruiters on LinkedIn. I calculated our budget down to the cent. If we cut groceries to $50 a week and canceled all subscriptions, we could survive for 6 weeks on Paul's income alone, provided nothing broke and nobody got sick. But panic has a smell, and I think my family could smell it on me before I even made the call. On Thursday afternoon, I called my parents, Diane and Walter Ross. They were currently retired in Florida, living in a condo complex with a pool and a strict no-noise policy after 9 in the evening. Mom, I lost the job, I said, cutting straight to the chase. Oh, Scarlett, she sighed. It was the sigh of someone who had just dropped a spoon. not someone whose daughter was in crisis. That is unfortunate. The economy is so tricky right now. It is more than tricky, I said, gripping the phone. Paul is away. The severance is practically non-existent. I was wondering if I could come stay with you guys for 2 weeks. Just until Paul gets back and I secure a new role. I can drive down. I just need to cut the rent expense for a month. There was a silence on the line. Then my father's voice came through. He must have been listening on speaker. Scarlett, you are 34 years old, Walter said. His voice was calm, authoritative, the voice of a man who believed poverty was a character flaw. If we let you run home every time you hit a bump in the road, you will never develop resilience. A bump in the road, I repeated. Dad, I was laid off. I am asking for a guest room for 14 days. It is the principle, my mother chimed in, her voice softening, which somehow made it worse. We love you, honey, but this is tough love. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Paul is a capable man. You two will figure it out. We believe in you. They hung up. I sat on my couch and stared at the blank television screen. Tough love, that was their favorite phrase. It was a convenient way to hoard their comfort while feeling morally superior about it. I thought that was the bottom. I thought being rejected by my parents while my husband was hundreds of miles away was the worst feeling I would experience that week. I was wrong. At 12 minutes past 8 in the evening on that same Thursday, there was a knock at my door. I frowned. Paul was not due back for 3 weeks. I was not expecting anyone. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Grady Fenwick, my landlord. Grady was a man in his 50s who always smelled faintly of damp drywall and mint chewing gum. He was generally harmless, the kind of landlord who fixed leaks eventually. Not immediately. I opened the door. Grady, is everything okay? Rent is not due until the 1st. Grady did not look at me. He looked at the door frame. He looked at his shoes. He looked anywhere but my face. He was shifting his weight from one foot to the other, a nervous tic I had never seen before. Hey, Scarlett, he said. He cleared his throat. Look, this is hard for me. My stomach dropped. What is hard? Grady? He reached into the back pocket of his jeans and pulled out a white envelope. It was folded in half. He did not hand it to me. He just held it. I had a visitor today, he said. Your sister, Kendra. I froze. Kendra lives across town. Why was she talking to you? Grady took a breath. She came by my office. She told me about the job, about Paul being gone. That is none of her business, I snapped. And it certainly is not yours, as long as the rent is paid. She made me an offer. Scarlett, Grady said. His voice dropped to a whisper. She offered me $1,000 cash to break the lease. Early termination. No penalty for me. Immediate vacancy for her friend who needs a place. I stared at him. The words did not make sense. What? She gave me $1,000, he repeated, louder this time, as if confessing a sin would absolve him of it. She said it was for your own good. She said you could not afford this place anymore, and you were too proud to leave. She said I would be doing you a favor by forcing the issue before you got into debt. The world tilted on its axis. My sister, my older sister, Kendra. And you took it, I whispered. Grady finally looked at me. His eyes were watery, weak. I have bills too. Scarlett, $1,000 is a lot of money, and she is family. I figured she knew what was best. He thrust a piece of paper toward me. This is the notice. 72 hours. Technically, since you are month to month now after the 1st year, and with the cause of, well, concern for financial solvency, I can ask you to vacate. It is all legal. I checked. I looked at the paper. It was a standard eviction notice. But the reason line was blank. It did not need a reason. In North Carolina, with the right loopholes and a cash bribe, tenants' rights were just suggestions. 72 hours, I said. Grady, I have nowhere to go. I am sorry, Scarlett, he said, and he started backing away down the walkway. I really am, but the cash is already deposited. He practically ran to his truck. I stood in the doorway. the cool night air hitting my face, holding the piece of paper that declared me homeless. My blood ran cold. This was not bad luck. This was a hit. I walked back inside, locked the door, and dialed Kendra. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, sis," she said. Her voice was bright, airy, completely unbothered. "I was wondering when you would call. You bribed my landlord," I said. My voice was shaking, not with sadness, but with a rage so hot it felt like I had swallowed a coal. "You gave Grady Fenwick $1,000 to kick me out of my house." "I helped you rip off the Band-Aid," Kendra corrected. I could hear the clinking of glass in the background. She was probably drinking wine. "Mom and Dad told me you called them, begging for a room. Really, Scarlett, it is pathetic. I lost my job." "Kendra." "Exactly," she said. "And you are clinging to a life you cannot afford. I did you a favor. You need to hit bottom so you can bounce back. You have always been too comfortable. Paul is always saving you. Daddy is always bailing you out emotionally. It is time for you to be pushed out of the nest." "I am 34, I screamed. "I am not a bird. I am a human being with a life. You cannot just pay someone to destroy my home." "It is already done," Kendra said, her voice turning steel hard. "Stop whining. Pack your stuff. Go stay in a motel. Learn to survive. You will thank me in a year. This is the push you needed." She hung up. I stood in the center of my living room. I looked at the couch we had bought on sale. I looked at the books on the shelf. Everything I owned, everything I had built, had been invalidated by 10 $100 bills handed over by my own sister. 72 hours. The next 3 days were a blur of adrenaline and despair. I did not tell Paul the full extent of it. I could not. He was on a high-pressure site. If I told him I was being evicted, he would leave the job, lose the contract, and we would be in even deeper financial ruin. I told him I was handling a maintenance issue and might stay at a hotel for a few days. I packed. I did not have boxes, so I used heavy-duty black trash bags. I shoved my clothes, my bedding, my kitchen essentials into plastic sacks. I looked like a scavenger in my own home. I sold the couch on Facebook Marketplace for $50 just to get it out of the house. I donated the books. I threw away things I should have kept because I simply did not have the space. By Sunday evening, my life was packed into the trunk and back seat of my Corolla. I did a final walkthrough of the duplex. It was empty. It echoed. It felt like a corpse. I locked the key inside and walked to my car. I drove to a 24-hour supermarket 3 miles away. It was a well-lit lot, patrolled by security that usually ignored people sleeping in cars as long as they moved by 6 in the morning. I reclined the driver's seat. I pulled a blanket over me. It was only October, but the night air was crisp. I locked the doors. I stared at the ceiling of my car. The fabric was gray and starting to peel in the corner. I had played by the rules. I had gone to college. I had gotten the corporate job. I had married the good man. I had paid my taxes. And here I was, sleeping in a parking lot next to a cart return, because my family decided I needed a lesson in suffering. But as I lay there, watching the headlights of late-night shoppers sweep across my dashboard, something shifted in my chest. The sadness began to recede, replaced by a clarity that was terrifyingly sharp. Kendra had said she did this to push me out of my comfort zone. She said it was about teaching me resilience. But Kendra was selfish. She was petty. She was cruel. But she was not generous. Kendra would never spend $1,000 on me just to teach me a life lesson. She would not spend $50 on me unless there was something in it for her. Why did she want me out of that house so badly? Why did she need me homeless and scrambling right now? This specific week, I closed my eyes. But I did not sleep. The sun came up at 6:45 in the morning. My neck was stiff. My mouth tasted like stale coffee. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. "Hello," I answered, my voice raspy. "Is this Scarlett Ross?" A woman's voice, professional, impatient. "Yes." "This is the escalated claims department at Viridian Credit," the woman said. We have been trying to reach you regarding the overdue balance on the surety bond you co-signed for Kendra Ross. We were informed that the collateral address on file your residence has been vacated. We need an updated asset location immediately, or we will be moving to garnish wages. I sat up straight, hitting my head on the car window. Excuse me? I said. I never co-signed a surety bond for Kendra. I have your signature right here, Mrs. Ross, the woman said. Dated 6 months ago, and since the primary borrower has defaulted and the collateral address is no longer valid as of it seems as of today the debt falls to you. I lowered the phone. The parking lot was silent, save for the hum of the highway in the distance. Kendra did not pay the landlord to teach me a lesson. She did not pay him to help me grow. She paid him $1,000 to make me homeless, because if I was not in that house, I could not receive the bank notices that were being mailed there. She paid him to kick me out, so that when the default hit, the bank could not find me. She pushed me off the cliff, not to see if I could fly, but to make sure I was too busy falling to see her robbing the safe. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My hair was messy. My eyes were red. I looked like a victim. But as I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white, I knew one thing for certain. They thought they had broken me. They thought they had thrown me away like the trash bags in my back seat. They had no idea that they had just handed me the weapon I needed to slit their throats. I started the car. The sun hitting the windshield of a Toyota Corolla at 7 in the morning does not feel like a new beginning. It feels like an interrogation lamp. I woke up because my neck had seized into a knot so tight it felt like calcified rock. For a few seconds, that blissful, disoriented window between sleep and consciousness, I thought I was in my bed. I reached out for Paul's side of the mattress, expecting the warmth of a duvet and the smell of his deodorant. Instead, my hand hit the hard, cold plastic of the parking brake. The reality rushed back in like a flood of ice water. The layoff, the landlord, the bribe, the text from the bank. I sat up, gasping as the stiffness in my spine registered. The windows were fogged up from my own breath, creating a private, humid capsule of misery. I rubbed a circle in the condensation and looked out. The supermarket parking lot was coming alive. Shoppers were pushing carts, arguing with their children, checking their watches. Normal people. People with keys in their pockets that opened doors they actually had the right to walk through. I felt invisible, not the superhero kind of invisible, but the kind where you are a smudge on the glass of the world. A woman in a navy blue blazer walked past my hood, talking on her phone, holding a reusable grocery bag. She looked right through me. To her, I was just background noise, a stationary object in a parking stall. I wondered if she would even blink if I rolled down the window and screamed. I needed to move. Security guards usually did their rounds at 8, and I could not handle the shame of a flashlight tapping on my window. I crawled into the front seat, my limbs protesting, and turned the key. The engine sputtered before catching. Even the car sounded tired. I drove 3 miles to a generic coffee chain nestled in a strip mall. I did not go there for the coffee. I went there because for the price of a small dark roast, I could buy 3 hours of air conditioning, a bathroom with running water, and a Wi-Fi connection. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, $2.85. I paid with a debit card that felt lighter in my hand than it used to. I took the cup and found a small table in the back corner, near an outlet. I sat down and wrapped both hands around the paper cup. The heat seeped into my palms, the first warmth I had felt in 9 hours. I held it like it was the only anchor keeping me from drifting off the face of the earth. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed, a portal to a life I was rapidly losing grip on. First, I checked my bank account. The number on the screen made my throat tight. $312.14. That was it. That was the sum total of my existence. I opened a spreadsheet and started typing, my fingers trembling slightly. Car insurance was due on the 15th, $108. My phone bill was due on the 20th, $89, gas, food, and the invisible, crushing cost of simply existing while looking for work. You cannot interview for a 6-figure job looking like you slept in a sedan. Dry cleaning cost money. Toothpaste cost money. Hope cost money. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a notification from WhatsApp. The Ross Family Circus. That was the name of our family group chat. I had named it that 3 years ago. Back when I thought our dysfunction was charming. Back when I thought we were just quirky. Not predatory. I should not have looked. I knew I should not have looked. But it is like pressing on a bruise. You have to know if it still hurts. I clicked the icon. A photo loaded. It was a selfie of Kendra. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, standing in front of a mid-century modern house with palm trees reflecting in the glass door. Kendra. Just touched down in Palm Springs. The Airbnb is literally to die for. Girls' trip is officially on. My breath hitched. Palm Springs. A flight to Palm Springs from Charlotte cost at least $400. The Airbnb she was standing in front of likely cost $300 a night. Below the photo, my mother, Diane, had replied, "Mom. Oh, honey, you look gorgeous. Did you pack the teal swimsuit? I am worried the lighting there might wash you out if you wear the beige one." Then my father, Walter, Dad, "Have a drink for me. Just closed the Henderson contract this morning. We are celebrating with steaks tonight. Enjoy yourself. You earned it." I scrolled up and down and up again. There was nothing else. No missed messages. No, "Has anyone heard from Scarlett?" No, "Is Scarlett?" Okay, no. Did Scarlett find a place to sleep? It had been 4 days since I told them I lost my job. It had been 48 hours since Kendra bribed my landlord to throw me onto the street. They knew. They all knew. And they were not just ignoring it. They were flourishing in spite of it. Or perhaps, they were flourishing because of it. I looked at the timestamps. Kendra's message was sent 10 minutes ago. She was sipping a cocktail in the desert while I was rationing mouthfuls of bitter coffee to make it last until noon. My father was buying steaks with money he claimed he did not have when I asked for help. The absurdity of it made me want to laugh. But if I started laughing, I was terrified I would start screaming and never stop. They were living in a completely different reality, in their world. I was just a character who had been written out of the script because her storyline became too inconvenient. But then, a memory surfaced. It was sharp and unbidden, cutting through the self-pity. I was 26. My great-aunt Martha had been dying of dementia in a hospice facility in upstate New York. She was difficult. She was mean. She threw soup bowls and forgot names. My mother had visited once, stayed for 20 minutes, and claimed the smell of the disinfectant gave her a migraine. Kendra had never visited at all, claiming she was too sensitive to death. I was the one who drove up there every weekend for 6 months. I was the one who held Martha's hand when she forgot how to speak. I was the one who cleaned her face. I was the one who managed the estate paperwork because my father said he was too busy with his consulting firm. And when Martha died, she left the house to me. I froze, my hand hovering over the laptop trackpad. The house, it was a duplex on the edge of Lake Ontario, just outside Rochester. It was old, drafty, and needed a new roof, but it was paid off. Martha had bought it with cash in the 80s. When I inherited it, I was already established in Charlotte. I did not want to move north. My parents, however, had just sold their house in a down market and were looking for a transition property before retiring to Florida. They had asked, with tears in their eyes, if they could stay in the duplex for a year, just to get back on their feet, just to save money. That was 5 years ago. They never moved out, even after they bought the condo in Florida. They kept the Rochester house as their northern base. They split their time. Kendra used it as a free vacation home whenever she wanted to ski or escape a bad breakup. I paid the property taxes. I paid the insurance. I paid for the major repairs. I never charged them a dime of rent, not 1 single cent. I told myself it was what good daughters did. I told myself that family supports family. I looked at the group chat again. You earned it. My father had written to Kendra. I closed WhatsApp and opened a new tab. I navigated to the Monroe County Clerk's website. My heart was hammering against my ribs. A frantic, bird-like rhythm. I typed in the address. 442 Lakeview Drive. The property record came up. Owner Scarlett Ross. Status active. I opened my email archives. I searched for dad and document. I found an email from 2 years ago. Subject favor, body scar. Honey, just need you to forward a utility bill for the Rochester place. Setting up a new LLC for the consulting work and need a physical mailing address for the registration. It is just a formality. I had sent it. I had not even thought twice. I dug deeper. I went to the state business registry. I searched for my father's name. Walter Ross Consulting Group. Principal address, 442 Lakeview Drive. Then I searched for court records, civil filings. My breath stopped. There was a lien notification from 6 months ago. It was dismissed. But it was there. A contractor had sued for non-payment on a renovation job done at the Lakeview address. The defendant listed was Walter Ross. I sat back in the hard wooden chair. The coffee shop noise, the grinder, the indie folk music. The chatter faded into a dull roar. They were not just living there. They were using my property, my sole asset, as a shield. My father was using the address to legitimize his business. He was likely listing the property as an asset on credit applications, banking on the fact that since we shared a last name, no loan officer would look too closely at the deed. He was building his resilience on the foundation of a house I owned. And Kendra. The surety bond the bank called me about yesterday, the one I supposedly co-signed. If she used the Rochester address as her permanent residence on the application, and I was the owner of that residence, the bank would have linked us automatically in their risk assessment. I looked at the coffee cup. It was cold now. I had been sleeping in my car because I thought I had nothing. I thought I was destitute. I thought I was the charity case they had finally gotten tired of supporting. But the truth was the exact opposite. I was not the dependent. I was the host. They were the parasites. They were living rent-free in my house. They were using my address to secure their loans. They were leveraging my credit to fund their stakes and their trips to Palm Springs. And the moment I became a financial liability, the moment I needed even a fraction of the support I had given them for half a decade, they cut me loose. They assumed I would be too broken to notice. They assumed I would be so busy trying to find a shower and a meal that I would never look at the paperwork. They assumed Scarlett the Fixer would just fade away into poverty, leaving them with the house and the assets. I picked up my phone. My hands were steady now. The trembling was gone. I scrolled through my contacts until I reached the letter A, Avery Caldwell. Avery was a lawyer I had hired briefly to handle the probate for Aunt Martha. She was sharp, aggressive, and expensive. She had told me 5 years ago, "You should charge them rent, Scarlett, even a nominal amount. You need a paper trail." I had laughed and said, "They are my parents. Avery, I do not need a contract for my parents." Avery had looked at me over the rim of her glasses and said, "Everyone needs a contract, especially for parents." I stared at her name on my screen. Calling her would cost money I did not have, but not calling her would cost me my life. I looked at the time, 9:15 in the morning. Her office would be open. If I pressed this button, the family barbecue was over. If I pressed this button, there would be no more fake pleasantries, no more group chats, no more pretending we were anything other than a transaction that had gone sour. I thought of Kendra's sunglasses. I thought of my father's steak. I thought of the cold, gray fabric of my car ceiling. I pressed the call button. The line rang once, twice. "Law office of Avery Caldwell," a receptionist answered. "This is Scarlett Ross," I said. My voice sounded different. It sounded like the voice of a woman who was done sleeping in parking lots. "I need to speak to Avery. Tell her it is about the house on Lakeview. Tell her I am ready to draft the eviction notices." I waited for the transfer, and for the first time in 4 days, I did not feel like crying. I felt like the person holding the match. "Avery," I said into the phone, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I need to cash in that favor you owe me, and I need to do it right now." Avery Caldwell did not do small talk. She did not ask how I was, or why I was calling from a number that likely showed up as a shaky cellular connection. She listened as I laid out the bare bones of the last 72 hours. The layoff, the bribe, the eviction, the text from the bank regarding the surety bond. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a terrifying moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then, Avery spoke. Her voice was dry, devoid of pity, and sharp as a razor. "Scarlett, I have a slot at 11:30. Come to the office and bring every single digital credential you have." She paused, then added the question that changed the trajectory of my entire life. "But before you drive over here, you need to answer one question for yourself. Do you want to stop being used, or do you want to demand justice? Because the paperwork for those two things looks very, very different." "I want them out," I said, gripping the steering wheel. "I want them to feel exactly what I am feeling right now." 11:30, she said. "Do not be late." I spent the next 2 hours frantically cleaning myself up in the bathroom of a public library. I washed my face with cold water and paper towels. I changed into the one wrinkled blazer I had managed to hang properly in the back seat. I looked tired. Yes, but I no longer looked like a victim. I looked like someone who had survived the crash and was walking away from the wreckage. Avery's office was in a strip mall near the county courthouse, sandwiched between a bail bondsman and a chiropractor. It was not a high-rise firm with glass walls and espresso machines. It was a small room piled high with manila folders, smelling of old paper and ambition. Avery was sitting behind her desk when I walked in. She was a woman in her late 50s, with steel gray hair cut into a sharp bob and eyes that had seen every variety of human greed imaginable. "Sit," she said, pointing to a chair. She did not comment on my wrinkled blazer. She simply opened a laptop. "I pulled the deed for 442 Lakeview Drive while you were driving over. It is clean. Sole ownership, Scarlett Ross. No liens from your side. Taxes are paid up to date." "By me," I added. "I pay the taxes." "Good," Avery said. "That simplifies things. Now, tell me about the tenants." "My parents," I said. "Diane and Walter. They have been there for 5 years." "Lease agreement." I shook my head. "No, it was supposed to be temporary. I just let them stay." Avery took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "In the state of New York, and frankly anywhere, that is a mess. But here is the good news. Since there is no lease, and no rent being paid, they are technically guests at will. Tenants at sufferance. Effectively, they have rights. But you have ownership. You can terminate that arrangement. It just requires following a very specific, very cold set of steps." She turned the screen toward me. It was a draft document. "Notice to quit," she read aloud. "This is step 1. We serve them formally. We give them 30 days to vacate. Not a request, not a family discussion, a legal command. If they refuse, we file for eviction proceedings immediately, and given that you are the sole owner and they are contributing nothing, the court will side with you. It will just take time." 30 days, I whispered. They gave me 72 hours. "We are using the law." "Scarlett," Avery said, her eyes locking onto mine. "They used a bribe. That is the difference. Now, let us talk about the money. You mentioned a surety bond." I nodded, pulling up the email on my phone. "Viridian Credit. They called me this morning. They said I co-signed for Kendra. But I swear, Avery, I never signed a bond. I signed a character reference for her 2 years ago when she was applying for a business loan. But that was it." Avery extended her hand. "Phone." I unlocked it and handed it to her. She scrolled through the email, tapped a few links, and hummed a low, dangerous sound. "This is not a character reference," she said. "This is a cross-collateralization agreement. Look here." She pointed to a tiny, pixelated signature at the bottom of a PDF. "Is that your signature?" I squinted. It looked like my signature. It had the loop on the S that I always did. "It looks like it," I said, "but I did not sign this document." "Digital insertion," Avery said flatly. "Did you ever send Kendra a high-resolution scan of your signature for anything, maybe for a birthday card? A petition? A school form for a niece or nephew?" My stomach turned. She asked me to digitally sign a petition to save a historic theater in her neighborhood last year. She sent me the link, but the link was broken. So she asked me to just email her a PNG of my signature so she could paste it onto the paper form. Avery looked at me with an expression that was half sympathy, half frustration. "And you sent it?" "She is my sister," I said weakly. "She is a fraud," Avery corrected. She lifted that image and pasted it onto a surety bond. "That is forgery. That is fraud. And that voids the debt obligation for you, provided we can prove it, but we have to file a police report to trigger the fraud investigation at the bank." I swallowed hard. A police report. That was a bell you could not unring. "There is more," I said, the floodgates opening. "My dad. 2 years ago, he needed a truck for the consulting business. His credit was shot from a bad investment. He asked me to co-sign. He said he would refinance it in his name after 6 months. I think I'm still on that loan." Avery typed rapidly on her keyboard. "Walter Ross, auto loan, Alley Financial. Yes, here it is. Outstanding balance is $28,000. 3 missed payments in the last 4 months. The car is currently at risk of repossession." "He told me business was booming," I said, feeling faint. "He just texted Kendra saying he closed a huge contract." "He is lying," Avery said. "He is likely using the cash flow to fund appearances while stiffing the creditors. Standard operating procedure for people who care more about looking rich than being solvent." She leaned back in her chair. The leather creaked. "Scarlett, you are not just their safety net. You are their host organism. They are feeding on your credit history and your assets." "I want out," I said. "Get me out of all of it." "We will," Avery said. "But I need to ask you something else, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer." She paused, her gaze piercing. "Your husband, Paul Henry, does he sign things?" I blinked. He is careful. He is a construction manager. He reads contracts for a living." "Does he read contracts from your sister?" Avery asked. "Kendra and Paul do not really get along," I said. "They barely speak. Does he read contracts from you?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Avery said, leaning forward, "if Kendra wanted to trap Paul, she would not send him a document herself. She would send it to you and ask you to forward it to him. 'Hey, can Paul look at this for me? Hey, can Paul just check the specs on this?'" The air in the room seemed to vanish. I grabbed my phone back from the desk. My fingers were shaking so badly I dropped it once before I could unlock it. I opened my sent folder. I searched Paul and PDF. Hundreds of emails came up. Grocery lists, flight itineraries, tax forms, and then one from 8 months ago. Subject FWD Kendra's project specs. Quick review. I opened it. "Hey babe." The email read, "Kendra is annoying me again. She needs someone to verify the structural liability waiver for that pop-up shop she's doing. Can you just skim it and sign off that the language looks standard so she stops texting me? Thanks. Love you." I opened the attachment. It was 12 pages long. The first 10 pages were standard construction gibberish about load-bearing walls and fire exits. But the 11th page, my eyes scanned the dense legal text. The undersigned hereby agrees to personally guarantee the performance of the lease obligations for the commercial entity known as. It was not a structural waiver. It was a personal guarantee for a commercial lease, a 3-year commercial lease in a high-end district. And at the bottom, in Paul's distinctive sharp handwriting, Paul Henry. "Oh my God," I whispered. She tricked me. She tricked me into tricking him." I looked up at Avery. She buried a lease guarantee in a stack of construction documents. Paul thought he was reviewing safety protocols. He signed a financial death warrant. Avery's face hardened. She closed the laptop with a snap. "Okay," she said. "Now we are not just talking about getting you out. Now we are talking about war." She pulled a yellow legal pad toward her and uncapped a pen. "Here is the battle plan. 3 prongs. We execute them simultaneously. We do not give them time to breathe. She wrote the number 1 and circled it. 1, the duplex. I am drafting the notice to quit immediately. I am sending it via certified mail. Return receipt requested to 442 Lakeview Drive. They will have 30 days to vacate. If they damage a single floorboard on the way out, we sue for destruction of property. She wrote the number 2, the withdrawal. I am going to draft affidavits for both you and Paul stating that the signatures on the surety bond and the commercial lease were obtained through fraud and misrepresentation. We are going to send notice of contest letters to every creditor attached to your names. We are going to freeze your credit report so hard that even Netflix will not be able to charge you. She wrote the number 3, pressing the pen down so hard the tip almost broke. 3, the bribe. She looked up at me. You said the landlord, Grady Fenwick, admitted he took $1,000. Yes, I said. He told me to my face. Did you record it? No. That is fine, Avery said. We do not need a recording yet. We need to scare him. I am going to send a formal demand letter to Mr. Fenwick informing him that we are investigating a violation of the Fair Housing Act and illegal eviction practices involving bribery. I am going to demand he preserve all communications texts, emails, voicemails between him and Kendra Ross. The moment he gets that letter, he is going to panic. And when people like Grady Fenwick panic, they turn on the people who paid them. Avery tore the sheet off the pad and pushed it toward me. This is going to get ugly, Scarlett, she warned. Your parents are going to call you crying. Your sister is going to call you screaming. They are going to tell you that you are destroying the family. They are going to gaslight you into thinking you are the villain. I looked at the yellow paper. I looked at the plan. It was cold. It was calculated. It was devastating. For years, I had been the soft place they landed. I had been the buffer. I had absorbed their debts, their bad decisions, their emotional chaos. I had let them live in my house while I slept in a car. I had let them jeopardize my husband's financial future while he was working himself to the bone to build ours. I thought about Paul, sweating on a construction site in Ohio, thinking his wife was safe, thinking his savings were secure, unaware that his signature was currently holding up a commercial lease for a sister-in-law who despised him. I do not care if it gets ugly, I said, my voice low. I am done being the cushion. If they want to fall, let them hit the concrete. Good, Avery said. She stood up and walked to a filing cabinet. Then let us start typing. I charge $300 an hour. But for this, I am going to defer billing until we get the settlement. Because trust me, when we are done with Kendra and your landlord, there is going to be a settlement. I spent the next 2 hours in that office. We drafted letters. We organized evidence. We built a fortress out of paper and ink. When I finally walked out of Avery's office, the sun was high in the sky. It was a bright, blinding afternoon in Charlotte. I walked to my car, the same car I had slept in for the last 3 nights. The passenger seat was still filled with trash bags of my clothes. My neck still hurt. I still had less than $300 to my name, but as I unlocked the door, I felt something I had not felt since the moment I was fired. I reached into my bag and pulled out the stack of envelopes Avery had given me to mail. Thick, heavy envelopes with green certified mail stickers on them. They felt heavy. They felt like bricks. I was not just a homeless woman in a parking lot anymore. I was a woman holding the detonator. I got into the car, put the envelopes on the dashboard, and drove to the post office. It was time to deliver the mail. The next 4 days were a study in duality. To the outside world, I was a woman in a downward spiral. I was the unemployed 34-year-old washing her face in the restroom of a Starbucks at 6 a.m. I was the person changing clothes in the back seat of a sedan in the corner of a Home Depot parking lot, trying to look presentable for job interviews that I knew I probably would not get. I was eating protein bars for dinner and counting every penny of the $240 left in my account. But inside the car, in the glow of my laptop screen, I was not spiraling. I was hunting. I had entered a state of cold, mechanical efficiency. The despair that had paralyzed me during the first 48 hours had evaporated. Replaced by the humming precision of a soldier assembling a rifle, I had a lawyer, I had a plan, and most importantly, I had tracking numbers. I spent my nights parked near the strongest public Wi-Fi signal I could find. Hitting refresh on the United States Postal Service website. Item arrived at regional facility. Rochester, New York. Item departed regional facility. Out for delivery. Watching that blue progress bar move across the screen gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. It was a slow-motion missile, heading straight for the comfortable, subsidized life my parents had built on my back. On Tuesday morning, I initiated the financial blackout. For years, I had set up automatic payments for things I considered family contributions. I paid the umbrella insurance policy that covered the Rochester duplex. I paid the internet bill for that house because my father complained that setting up the online portal was too confusing. I even paid for the streaming services that they watched on the 40-inch television I had bought them for Christmas 3 years ago. I logged into the insurance portal first. Policy status active. Next payment scheduled October 24th. My finger hovered over the mouse. This was the insurance that protected the house from fire, flood, and liability. If I canceled it, the house was vulnerable, but the house was mine. If I canceled it, I was risking my own asset. I called Avery. "Change the billing address," Avery said, her voice crackling over the Bluetooth speaker of my car. "Do not cancel the policy. Just remove the autopay and have the bill sent to the property address. Address to occupant. Let them see the bill. Let them see how much it costs to keep a roof over their heads. If they do not pay it, you will get a notification of non-payment grace period, and you can step in then. But for now, let the paper land in their mailbox." "Done," I said. I went down the list. The internet, the streaming services, the cloud storage plan my mother used to store thousands of photos of her garden, update payment method, delete card, confirm, one by one. I severed the veins that had been feeding them. It was silent work. There was no explosion, no screaming argument, just a series of clicks that would result, in about a week, in a sudden and confusing loss of convenience. The screens would go black, the internet would throttle, the letters would start piling up with red stamps on them. Then came the banking move. I drafted the formal letter of dispute regarding the surety bond and the car loan. I attached the affidavit Avery had prepared, stating clearly that I was investigating potential identity theft and fraud regarding the digital insertion of my signature. I uploaded the documents to the bank's secure message center. 2 hours later, my phone pinged with an email notification from the bank's risk department. "Dear Ms. Ross, regarding your inquiry, we have placed a temporary freeze on the associated accounts pending a fraud investigation. All authorized users and guarantors will be notified that the credit line is under review." I stared at the screen. All authorized users will be notified. That meant my sister, Kendra, was about to get an email telling her that her credit line, the one she used to fund her lifestyle, was frozen. It meant my father was about to get a call about his truck. The invisible noose was tightening. Wednesday came, and with it, a strange phenomenon. The WhatsApp group chat, the Ross family circus, went dead. Usually, my mother posted 3 or 4 times a day, photos of her breakfast, inspirational quotes about gratitude, questions about why I had not liked her Facebook post yet. Kendra usually responded with emojis or complaints about the weather. But for the last 24 hours, absolute radio silence, no photos from Palm Springs, no bragging about contracts. I sat in my car, eating a cold bagel, and watched the chat. The silence was heavy. It was the silence of people who were suddenly very, very busy. It was the silence of a group of people who had just felt the ground shift beneath them and were frantically trying to figure out where the earthquake was coming from. They did not know it was me. Not yet. They likely thought it was a bank error or a postal mix-up. They were probably calling customer service lines, yelling at representatives, demanding to speak to managers. They were probably wondering why their cards were being declined at restaurants. They had no idea the call was coming from inside the house. That afternoon, I decided to turn my attention to Grady Fenwick. I had been so focused on my family that I had almost put the landlord on the back burner. But Avery's strategy required pressure on all fronts. I drove to the public library and found a quiet cubicle. I called the North Carolina Tenant Rights Resource Line. It was a free service, usually staffed by overworked paralegals, but I just needed verification. I need to ask about a specific eviction scenario, I told the volunteer on the line. If a landlord accepts a cash payment from a third party to terminate a lease without cause and without a court order, is that considered a constructive eviction? The volunteer laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. That is not just constructive eviction, ma'am. That is a tortious interference with a contract. And if the landlord didn't report that cash as income, that is tax fraud. Did he give you a written receipt for the lease break fee? No, I said. He gave me a 72-hour notice and said he took cash from a relative. If you can prove he took the money, the volunteer said, you can sue him for treble damages. That means 3 times the amount of your actual damages. Moving costs, emotional distress, the difference in rent for a new place, and the State Real Estate Commission would be very interested in hearing about a landlord taking bribes to bypass the fair housing laws. I wrote down everything she said. Treble damages, Real Estate Commission, tax fraud. I remembered Grady Fenwick's nervous face when he handed me the envelope. He was a small-time crook. He wasn't a mastermind. He did it for $1,000 because he needed the cash, which meant he was desperate. And desperate people make mistakes when they get scared. I drafted an email to Grady. I did not send it yet. I just saved it in my drafts. I wanted to wait until the certified letter from Avery landed on his desk. I wanted the 1-2 punch. My phone rang at 5 in the evening. It was Paul. My heart jumped. I had been texting him short. Vague updates. Still job hunting. Staying with a friend. Love you because I couldn't bear to tell him the truth while he was stressed on site. But I needed to talk to him. Avery was right. He was exposed. Hey, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Scarlett? Paul's voice sounded tinny and exhausted. I could hear the beep of heavy machinery in the background. I finally got a signal. I've been trying to call you all day. Why are your texts so short? Is everything okay? I closed my eyes. I was sitting in a sweltering car, wearing clothes I had worn for 2 days, plotting the destruction of my family. Paul, I said, I need you to listen to me very carefully, and I need you not to panic. That is the best way to make me panic. Scar, what is it? Is it your mom? No, I said. It is us. It is the finances, and it is the legal stuff. I took a deep breath. I need you to come home as soon as this shift rotation is done. I need you back in Charlotte. I can't just leave, Paul said, his voice rising. We need the completion bonus. If I leave early, we lose the $5,000 kicker. You know that, especially if you are out of work. Paul, I cut in, my voice dropping to a serious, hard register he had never heard before. The $5,000 bonus does not matter if we are on the hook for a $300,000 commercial lease default. The line went silent. The beeping in the background seemed to get louder. What did you say? Paul asked. Kendra, I said. The document you signed 8 months ago. The one she said was a structural liability waiver. It wasn't. It was a personal guarantee for her retail space, and she is defaulting. Paul, the bank is looking at us. That is impossible, Paul stammered. I read the first few pages. It was standard safety stuff. She switched the back pages, I said. Or she buried it. Avery found it. Your signature is on a guarantee. And because we are married, that puts our future assets at risk. I heard him exhale. A sound like he had been punched in the gut. She played me, Paul whispered. Your sister played me. She played both of us, I said. But I am fixing it. I have a lawyer. We are fighting it. But I need you here to sign affidavits. I need you here to stand next to me when we face them. I cannot do this alone. Paul, not this part. I am booking a flight, Paul said instantly. The hesitation was gone. I will be there in 24 hours. Screw the bonus. No, I said. Finish the shift. Get the flight for Friday. We need every dollar we can get to pay Avery. Just be ready. It is going to be a war when you get back. I love you. Scarlett, he said. I am sorry I didn't read the damn thing closer. I love you too, I said. It is not your fault. It is theirs. I hung up. I felt a weight lift off my chest, but it was replaced by a new tension. Paul was coming. The cavalry was arriving, but that meant the confrontation was inevitable. I tried to sleep that night, but the parking lot was noisy. A car alarm went off at 2 a.m. A couple argued loudly near the entrance at 3. At 8 a.m. on Thursday, my phone rang again. It was a number I did not recognize, a local Charlotte area code. I cleared my throat and answered. This is Scarlett. Ms. Ross, a man's voice said. It was smooth, deep, and overly familiar. This is Jim Calloway. I am a business associate of your father's. Walter gave me your number a while back. I sat up straighter. I do not know you. Mr. Calloway? Oh, we haven't met personally, he said. But Walter speaks very highly of you. Look, I am calling because Walter is a bit distressed this morning. He got a notification from his insurance carrier about a lapse in policy on the Rochester property, and something about a credit freeze on his truck loan. My grip on the phone tightened. If my father is distressed, he can call me himself. Well, that is the thing, Calloway said, his voice dropping an octave. It wasn't aggressive. Exactly. It was worse. It was the voice of a man who was used to making problems disappear. Walter is a proud man. He doesn't want to burden you, but these interruptions, they are bad for business. They look bad. I am an investor in his consulting group. You see, and when his assets get frozen, my investment gets shaky. That sounds like a problem between you and Walter, I said coldly. Scarlett, he said, I am just calling to give you some friendly advice. Family squabbles are one thing, but messing with a man's liquidity that affects people outside the family. You don't want to be the reason your father's business partners get irritated. I would suggest you turn those little switches back on. Let everything flow smoothly again, for everyone's safety. It was a threat, a soft, polished threat, wrapped in concern. Mr. Calloway, I said, I am recording this call. There was a pause. I am just checking on a friend's daughter, he said, his tone shifting instantly to jovial. No need for drama. Just think about it. Click. I stared at the phone. My hands were shaking again. My father had set his partners on me. He was too cowardly to call me himself. So he had one of his shadowy business friends try to scare me into compliance. They really thought I was the same Scarlett. They thought I would crumble at the first sign of conflict. But they had forgotten one thing. I had nothing left to lose. I was living in a Corolla. You cannot threaten a woman who has already lost her home with irritation. Then, the notification popped up. A new email. From Grady Fenwick. Subject urgent. Regarding your lease. I opened it. My heart pounded against my ribs. Scarlett, I received a letter from an attorney named Avery Caldwell today. I think there has been a big misunderstanding. I did not mean to imply that I was kicking you out illegally. I was just trying to facilitate a transition that your family requested. I do not want any trouble with the housing board. I am a small business owner. I still have the $1,000 your sister gave me. I have not spent it. I am willing to give it to you. In fact, I am willing to give you $2,000, cash. Today, I can meet you. All I ask is that we sign a mutual release form stating that our lease ended amicably and that you will not pursue any complaints with the state board. Please, let us handle this like adults. No lawyers needed. Grady. I read the email twice. Then I laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound in the quiet car. $2,000. He was offering me double the bribe to shut up. He was terrified. Avery's letter must have landed. He realized that for $1,000, he had exposed himself to a lawsuit that could cost him his license and tens of thousands in fines. He thought it was about the money. He thought he could buy my silence just like Kendra had bought his compliance. But as I looked at the number $2,000, I realized something. If he was willing to pay $2,000 just to stop the bleeding, it meant he knew he was guilty. It meant I had him. And if I had him, I could use him. I did not reply. I let him sweat. I started the car. The engine roared to life, sounding louder than before. The silence was over. The first domino had fallen, and the sound of it hitting the floor was the sweetest thing I had heard in years. I put the car in drive. I had to go find a place to shower. Paul was coming home tomorrow, and I had a war council to prepare for. But for the first time in 5 days, I wasn't driving away from my problems. I was driving toward them. The silence of the last 24 hours was not peace. It was the deep breath before the scream. I was sitting in my car in the far corner of a Walmart parking lot, organizing my receipts on the dashboard, when the first mortar shell landed. It was 10:15 in the morning on Friday. My phone screen lit up with a photo of my parents. It was a picture from their 40th anniversary. Smiling, tanned, and seemingly harmless. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the decline button. But Avery's advice echoed in my head. Let them talk. Let them dig their own graves. Just do not agree to anything. I swiped green and put it on speaker. Hello, I said. Scarlett, honey. My mother's voice came through. It was soft, trembling, pitched at that specific frequency designed to trigger instant guilt in a daughter. We got a very strange letter today, from a lawyer, and the internet is down at the house. Your father is very upset. We thought surely there must be a mistake. There is no mistake. Mom, I said, staring at a stray shopping cart that had been abandoned against a curb. The letter is a notice to quit. You have 30 days to vacate the property. Vacate, my father's voice boomed from the background. He had snatched the phone away. Scarlett, have you lost your mind? This is your parents you are talking to. We are family. You do not evict family. You do when they steal from you, I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. You do when they use your house to secure business loans without asking. You do when they treat you like a disposable resource. We were helping you build equity, my father shouted. The tough love facade was cracking, revealing the panic underneath. That house was rotting until we moved in. We maintained it. And now, because you lose your job and get a little hysterical, you want to throw us on the street. You are being incredibly selfish. Scarlett, after everything we have done for you. Selfish. I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. Dad, I am sleeping in a Corolla. I am washing my hair in a sink at a public library. You are living in a 3-bedroom house for free while I am homeless, and you call me selfish. You are young, my mother interjected. Crying now. You can handle it. We are retired. We have health issues. How can you be so cruel? We raised you better than this. You raised me to be a doormat, I said. And I am done lying down. You have 30 days. If you're not out, the sheriff will remove you. I hung up. My hand was shaking. Not from fear, but from the sheer physical effort of not apologizing. For 34 years. I am sorry, had been my reflex. Suppressing it felt like holding my breath underwater. 2 minutes later, Kendra called. There was no preamble with Kendra, no soft voice. Are you insane? She screamed the moment I answered. I just got an alert from Credit Karma. My score dropped 40 points in an hour. The bank says my accounts are under fraud review. Do you have any idea what you have done? I disputed a debt I did not sign for, I said. It is called fraud protection. Kendra, if you did not forge my signature, you have nothing to worry about. I did not forge it, she shrieked. You sent me that signature. For the petition, you knew I was going to use it. You are twisting everything because you are bitter about the apartment. I am bitter about being homeless. Kendra, I yelled back, my control snapping. I am bitter that you paid a stranger $1,000 to make your sister sleep in a parking lot. I did not make you homeless, she retorted. I freed you. And now you are trying to ruin my life. I have a closing on a condo next week. Scarlett, if my credit is frozen, the loan falls through, I will lose my deposit. I will lose $10,000. Then maybe you should ask Mom and Dad for it, I said. They seem to think family supports family. Ask them. You are a monster, she spat. I am going to fix this, and you are going to regret starting this war. She hung up. I sat there, breathing hard, the air in the car feeling thin. They did not care. They truly, deeply did not care that I was destitute. Their only concern was the inconvenience I was causing to their comfort. I checked the time, 11:30. Paul's flight landed at 12:15. I drove to the airport. The drive was a blur. I was running on caffeine and righteous indignation. But underneath it, I was terrified. Paul was the variable I could not control. He was a good man, a conflict-avoidant man, a man who valued peace above almost anything else. I parked in the hourly lot, a luxury I could barely afford, and walked to baggage claim. I saw him coming down the escalator. He looked tired. His work boots were dusty, and he was carrying his duffel bag like it weighed 100 pounds. But he was not looking for me. He was looking at his phone. He was typing furiously. I walked up to him. Paul! He looked up. His eyes were wide, stressed. He didn't hug me immediately. He just looked at me, scanning my face, my wrinkled blazer, my messy hair. Jesus. Scarlett, he said. Kendra has been texting me since I took off from Cleveland. She sent me like 50 messages. I bet she did, I said, reaching for his hand. He took it, but his grip was loose. She says you are having a breakdown, Paul said as we walked toward the exit. She says you are lashing out at everyone because of the layoff. She says you cut off your parents' electricity, Scarlett. Is that true? It was the internet, I said, gritting my teeth. And I did not cut it off. I stopped paying for it. There is a difference. She sent me screenshots, Paul said, his voice rising as we stepped out into the humid North Carolina air. She says you are accusing her of felonies. She says you are threatening to sue everyone. Babe, I know you are stressed. I know losing the job was a hit, but we can't go nuclear on your family. We have to live with these people. We reached the car. I unlocked it. The back seat was still piled high with black trash bags. Paul stopped. He stared at the bags. He stared at the sleeping bag rolled up in the passenger seat. What is this? He asked. This is where I live. Paul, I said. This is what they did not tell you in the texts. I have been sleeping here for 5 days. I thought you were at a hotel, he whispered. I could not afford a hotel, I said, because I was saving our money to pay the bills. And because your sister-in-law paid our landlord $1,000 to kick me out, Paul rubbed his face. Kendra said that was an intervention. She said the landlord was going to evict you anyway because of the job loss, and she just helped speed it up so you wouldn't get an eviction on your record. She said she offered you money to stay at a motel, and you threw it in her face. I stared at him. The lie was so audacious, so perfectly crafted to make me look ungrateful, that I almost admired it. Get in the car, I said. We drove to a park nearby. I could not take him back to the duplex. I didn't have a key anymore. We sat on a park bench. Paul, I said, reaching into my bag, I need you to look at something, and I need you to stop listening to Kendra for 5 minutes and listen to the evidence. I pulled out the document Avery had printed for me, the structural liability waiver. Do you remember signing this? I asked. Paul took the paper. He squinted at it. Yeah. The pop-up shop thing. Kendra was blowing up my phone, said the contractor needed it that day. I skimmed it. It was boilerplate. Turn to page 11, I said. He flipped the pages. He read the header, personal guarantee of lease obligations. He stopped. He read it again. What is this? He asked. It is a guarantee, I said. Kendra is renting a retail space for 3 years, $5,000 a month. She didn't qualify for the lease on her own. She needed a guarantor with a steady income and assets. That is you. But, Paul sputtered, she said it was for liability, like if a customer tripped and fell. She lied, I said. She buried this page in the middle. You signed it. And now, she is behind on rent. The landlord is threatening to call the guarantee. If she defaults, they come after us. They garnish your wages. They put a lien on our future house. Paul went pale. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. 3 years, he whispered. That is almost $200,000. Yes, I said. That is why I froze the credit. That is why I hired Avery. I am not having a breakdown. Paul, I am trying to stop your sister from bankrupting us. Paul dropped the paper on the bench. He put his head in his hands. I signed it, he groaned. I didn't even read it. I just wanted her to shut up. I know, I said softly. That is how they work. They wear you down until you say yes, just to get some peace. But we cannot give them peace anymore. Paul looked up. His eyes were angry now. I am going to call her. We need to meet. We need to sit down and fix this. If I explain that I didn't know what I was signing. Paul, I cut him off. There is no fixing this with a conversation. You cannot reason with a person who tricked you into signing a $200,000 debt. We have to try, he insisted. She is family. Maybe if we meet her face to face, maybe she will agree to release me from the guarantee if we drop the other stuff. We can smooth this over. I looked at my husband. I loved him, but he was still clinging to the idea that the rules of decency applied here. Smooth it over, I asked, my voice sharp. Smooth it over for who? For the woman who paid a man to put your wife on the street. For the woman who lied to you. You want to make peace with the person who is currently trying to destroy us. I just want it to stop, Paul yelled. I want to go back to normal. There is no normal, I yelled back. Normal was us being used. Normal was us being the suckers. My phone pinged. A new email notification. I looked down. It was from Grady Fenwick, the landlord. Subject notice of negative rental history. I opened it. Scarlett, since you are choosing to involve lawyers and threaten me, I have no choice but to protect my business interests. I am filing a formal report with the Tenant Data Exchange regarding your tenancy. I will be noting that you were evicted for behavioral issues and mental instability causing safety concerns for neighbors. This will go on your permanent rental record. Good luck finding another apartment in North Carolina with that on your file. If you drop the lawyer, I will reconsider. I felt the blood drain from my face. This was the nuclear option. A bad rental history for safety concerns was a death sentence for a tenant. I would never be able to lease a reputable apartment again. What is it? Paul asked, seeing my face. Fenwick, I said. He is threatening to blacklist me. He says he is going to report me for mental instability. I scrolled down. Fenwick had forwarded an attachment to prove he had cause. It was an email from Kendra to Fenwick, dated the day before the eviction. From Kendra Ross to Grady Fenwick. Subject regarding Unit 4B Grady. Here is the cash we discussed. As agreed, please initiate the termination immediately. My sister Scarlett is going through a severe mental health crisis after losing her job. She has become unstable, paranoid, and potentially dangerous to herself and others. Removing her from the unit is the only way to force her to get the help she needs. Consider this an emergency safety measure. I will back you up if she complains. I handed the phone to Paul. Read this, I said. Read what your sister wrote to my landlord to justify the bribe. Paul took the phone. He read the email. His jaw tightened. He read it again. Unstable, he whispered. Dangerous. She legitimized the eviction, I said. She gave him a cover story. She painted me as a lunatic so he would feel okay about taking the money, and now he is using her lie to destroy my future ability to have a home. Paul stood up. He walked to the trash can and kicked it, hard. The metal clanged, startling a flock of pigeons. He turned back to me. The conflict was gone from his face. The desire to smooth things over had evaporated. She called you dangerous, he said. His voice was low, dangerous in its own right. She told a stranger that my wife was crazy so she could steal her apartment. Yes, I said. And she tricked me into signing a lease, he added. Yes. Paul walked back to the bench. He sat down next to me and picked up the legal documents. Call the lawyer, he said. Call Avery. Tell her I am in. Tell her I will sign whatever affidavit she needs. I want my name off that lease. And I want Kendra to pay for every single night you slept in this car. I looked at him. This was the moment I had been waiting for. My husband was finally seeing them clearly, but as I looked at his face, I realized something terrifying. Kendra and my parents were not going to stop. Now that Paul had sided with me, now that they could not manipulate his wallet or his nice guy nature, they would switch tactics. They wouldn't just attack our finances anymore. They would attack the only thing we had left. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. Mom. Paul just landed. Didn't he? Be careful. Paul, Scarlett is not herself right now. She is imagining things. Don't let her drag you down with her. You have always been the smart one. We need to talk to you alone. They were already trying to peel him away. They were going to try to break our marriage to save their lifestyles. I showed the text to Paul. He looked at it, then looked at me. He took his phone out of his pocket and turned it off. Let's go to Avery's, he said. I'm done talking to them. We walked back to the car. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. We were united. Yes, but as I watched Paul stare out the window, I knew the hardest part wasn't the legal battle. It was watching the people he once considered family try to turn him against the woman he loved, all for the sake of a free house and a signature. We sat in a conference room that smelled of stale coffee and laser printer ozone. It was Saturday morning, while the rest of Charlotte was out having brunch or mowing lawns. Paul, Avery, and I were dissecting the corpse of my family's betrayal. The table was covered in paper. We had turned my chaotic life into 3 neat stacks: the eviction, the duplex, and the guarantee. The law loves paper, Avery said, tapping a red pen against her chin. But it loves timestamps even more. Liars can fake a narrative, but they almost never get the chronology right. If we can prove they moved before they had the right to, or signed before they read, we win. Paul was hunched over his laptop. He had been quiet since we left the park, a brooding, heavy silence that scared me more than his anger. He was not a man who held grudges easily, but when he did, he held them like stones. He was trawling through his archived emails, looking for anything related to Kendra or Fenwick. I found it, Paul said. His voice was flat. I looked over. Found what? The smoking gun? Paul said. Or at least the bullet casing. He turned the laptop toward Avery and me. It was an email chain from 8 months ago. Kendra had forwarded a thread to Paul, supposedly to show him some specs for her retail space. But she had been sloppy. She had forgotten to delete the history at the bottom of the chain. Buried under 3 layers of forwarded messages was a brief exchange between Kendra and a generic email address rental _management_CLT. I leaned in, squinting at the text. Kendra Grady. I need this done fast. If we wait for the standard 30-day notice, she might try to fight it or borrow money to stay. I need her out this week. $1,000 cash for a rapid processing fee. Just tell her it is immediate. She will fold. She always folds. Grady cash on delivery. Tuesday night, I will bring the notice. The air in the room went cold. She will fold, I whispered. She always folds. That hurt more than the eviction. It was not just a crime. It was a character assessment. My sister had bet $1,000 on my cowardice. She was so sure I would crumble, so sure I would be too ashamed to ask questions, that she put it in writing. This is not just leverage, Avery said, a shark-like grin spreading across her face. This is conspiracy to commit tortious interference. And since Fenwick is a licensed property manager, accepting an off-the-books cash payment to bypass tenancy laws is a license-revoking offense. We have him by the throat. There is more, I said. I requested the security footage. I pulled a USB drive out of my pocket the day before. I had gone back to my old apartment complex. I didn't go to Fenwick. I went to the maintenance supervisor, a guy named Al, who had always liked me because I baked cookies for the staff at Christmas. I told him I had lost a package and needed to check the hallway camera timestamp. He had let me copy the feed for the night of the eviction. I plugged the drive into Avery's computer. We watched the grainy black and white footage. 8:05 in the evening. Kendra's BMW pulled into the visitor lot. She did not park. She idled. 8:07. Grady Fenwick walked out of the leasing office. He walked up to the driver's side window. 8:08. An envelope was passed from the car to Fenwick. He put it in his back pocket. 8:10. Kendra drove away. 8:12. Fenwick walked up to my door and knocked. "Quid pro quo," Avery said softly. "The money changed hands 4 minutes before he served you the notice. He didn't even file the paperwork in his office first. He took the cash and walked straight to your door. That proves intent. He wasn't acting as a landlord. He was acting as a mercenary." We had the eviction nailed down, but Avery was already moving to the next stack, the duplex. She opened a file on her desk. "I pulled the full credit report for your parents, Walter and Diane. It is public record when it is attached to certain secured loan applications." "And?" I asked. 6 months ago, they applied for a $50,000 line of credit from a regional bank. Avery said, "On the application, under real estate assets, they listed 442 Lakeview Drive." I felt a wave of dizziness. "They listed my house. They listed it as primary residence, owner-occupied," Avery corrected. "They checked the box that says they own the property free and clear. They use the equity in your house equity. They do not have to secure a loan for themselves." "That is bank fraud," Paul said, looking up from his screen. "That is federal." "It is," Avery agreed. "But here is the kicker. The bank didn't catch it because your last names are the same, and the deed is just under Ross. They probably provided a forged tax bill or just relied on a lazy loan officer. But the moment we send that eviction notice, the bank gets alerted that their asset is kicking them out. The loan will be called immediately. They will owe $50,000 instantly." I sat back in the chair. The picture was getting clearer, and it was uglier than I could have imagined. "It wasn't a lesson," I said. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Kendra didn't pay Fenwick to teach me resilience. She didn't care about my job. I looked at Paul. "Think about the timing. The credit line my parents took out, the payments were probably coming due. The surety bond Kendra tricked you into signing, she is probably defaulting on the rent for her shop. The walls were closing in on them months ago." "So why kick you out?" Paul asked. "Why make you homeless?" "Distraction," I said. If I was sitting at home, unemployed, looking at my budget, I might have checked the property tax records for the duplex. I might have opened the mail that came to the house mail from the bank about the bond. They needed me in crisis. They needed me sleeping in a car, panicked, scrambling for food. So I wouldn't have the bandwidth to notice they were drowning in debt and using our names as life preservers. Paul slammed his hand on the table. "They threw you in the garbage to hide the paper trail." "And it almost worked," I said. "If I hadn't called Avery, if I had just folded like Kendra said I would, we would be on the hook for all of it when they inevitably crashed." "We are not done," Paul said. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was the copy of the lease guarantee he had signed. "I have been staring at this for an hour," Paul said. "Look at the page numbers." I looked. Page 10 of 12, then page 11 of 12. "Look closer," Paul said. "Look at the footer." I squinted. The footer on page 10 said V4.2_standard_lease. The footer on page 11, the page with the guarantee and his signature, said V4.2_addendum_B. "The font is different," Paul said. "It is Arial on page 10. It is Helvetica on page 11. It is subtle. You wouldn't notice it on a screen if you were rushing, but on paper it is clear." "She swapped the page," Avery said. "She gave you a standard contract. You read the first 10 pages, and then she slipped in a page from a completely different document for you to sign at the end. That is how she got the guarantee past you. It creates reasonable doubt, Avery continued, scribbling furiously on her notepad. We can argue that the contract you thought you were signing is not the one that was executed. It might not be enough to get a summary judgment, but it is enough to make the bank pause enforcement. It buys us time. We left Avery's office at 2 p.m. I felt drained, but lighter. We had ammunition. We had proof, but proof does not buy groceries. Paul had to go back to the site in Ohio on Sunday night to finish his contract. We needed that bonus money more than ever now. That meant I was alone again in Charlotte for another week. But this time, I refused to sleep in the car. I needed cash, fast. I couldn't wait for a corporate hiring cycle. I needed a job that paid weekly. I drove to a temp agency in a strip mall on the south side of the city. I walked in wearing my wrinkled blazer. I need work, I told the recruiter. Anything, admin, data entry, warehouse, I do not care. She looked at my resume on her screen. You were a senior customer success manager. You managed a team of 20. I am currently available for immediate placement, I said stiffly. I have a spot at Northcrest Outreach, she said. It is a non-profit distribution center. They need someone to manage the logistics of their food pantry and handle intake forms. It pays $18 an hour. It is messy work. You will be on your feet. I will take it, I said. For the next 3 days, my life was a strange hybrid of white-collar strategy and blue-collar survival, from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. I worked at Northcrest. I hauled boxes of canned beans. I organized spreadsheets of donor data. I helped people fill out forms for heating assistance people who looked a lot like I felt. I ate lunch standing up in a break room that smelled of cardboard and sanitizer. At 5 p.m, I went to the library or sat in my car, reviewing legal drafts from Avery. I was tired. My feet ached, but the physical labor was grounding. It reminded me that I could survive. I wasn't just a corporate title. I was a pair of hands. I was a brain. I was resilient. On Wednesday, the first counterstrike landed. I was at the warehouse, tallying inventory on clipboards. When my phone rang, it was Kendra. I walked out to the loading dock to answer. What do you want? Kendra? I asked. We need to stop this, she said. Her voice was tight, rushed. The bank froze my accounts. Scarlett, I can't pay my vendors. I'm going to lose the shop. You should have thought of that before you forged my signature, I said, watching a forklift back up to a truck. I did not forge it, she insisted, though with less conviction this time. Look, I talked to Mom and Dad. We are willing to make a deal. I am listening, I said. I will give you the $1,000 back, Kendra said, and I will add another $1,500 cash. You can get a nice apartment. You can get back on your feet. Just withdraw the affidavit. Tell the bank it was a misunderstanding. Tell Avery to drop the eviction. I gripped the phone. The audacity was breathtaking. $1,500, I repeated. You think $1,500 fixes this? It is free money. Scarlett, she snapped. You are broke. You are working at a food bank. For God's sake, I saw your LinkedIn update. Do not be proud. Take the money. This isn't a negotiation, I said. And I am not holding out for a better price. You committed crimes. Kendra, you and Fenwick committed crimes. You and Dad committed fraud. We are family, she screamed. You are going to send your father to jail over a house you don't even use. It is my house, I said. And it is my life. You sold me out for $1,000. Now you want to buy me back for $1,500. My price has gone up. Kendra, my price is the truth. You are going to regret this, she hissed. Fenwick is furious. He knows people. Tell Fenwick I have the security footage, I said. Silence. Dead silence. What? She whispered. The camera in the parking lot, I said. 8:08 p.m. The handoff. I have it. Avery has it. The police will have it if you push me. She hung up. I stood on the loading dock, breathing in the smell of diesel fumes and rain. I felt a strange vibration in my pocket. It was a text from Avery. Call me, now. I dialed her number. Did you talk to her? Avery asked. She just called, I said. She offered me $1,500 to make it go away. Avery laughed. It was a dark, delightful sound. Of course she did. She is panicked. But Scarlett, I have been running the numbers. I have been looking at the statutes for North Carolina and New York. And we are not suing for an apology, Avery said. And we are not suing for rent. What are we suing for under the Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act in North Carolina if we prove Fenwick and Kendra conspired to perform an illegal eviction? We are entitled to treble damages on the entire value of the lease, plus emotional distress, plus legal fees. Avery explained. And regarding the duplex, if we prove your parents committed mortgage fraud using your deed, we can force a partition sale of their other assets to cover the liability. She paused. Scarlett, if we push this all the way to a verdict, or even a high-pressure settlement, we are not looking at $1,500. What are we looking at? I asked. Between the wrongful eviction, the credit damage, the fraud, and the punitive damages, Avery said. We are looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000, maybe more. I almost dropped the phone. $250,000. That was enough to pay off our debts. It was enough to buy a house. It was enough to start over completely. They wanted to bankrupt you, Avery said, but they were so arrogant and so sloppy that they effectively handed you a winning lottery ticket. All we have to do now is cash it. I looked out at the gray sky. $1,000 to kick me out. $250,000 to let me back in. Do it, I said. File everything. Burn it down. The domino effect is a concept we usually talk about in the abstract. We use it to describe geopolitical shifts or market crashes, but I learned on a Wednesday afternoon, standing in a warehouse smelling of cardboard and dust, that the domino effect is also a sound. It is the sound of a phone vibrating against a metal shelving unit, over and over again, as the fragile architecture of lies begins to collapse. It started at 2:30 in the afternoon. I was conducting inventory on a pallet of canned peaches. My hands were dry, covered in the fine gray dust that coats everything in a distribution center. My phone, which I had propped up on a stack of invoices, lit up. It was my father. I had not spoken to Walter Ross since I told him to vacate the duplex. I expected shouting. I expected the bluster of a man who was used to being the loudest voice in the room. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered. Hello? What did you do? His voice was not loud. It was strangled. It sounded like someone had tightened a zip tie around his throat. I am working, Dad, I said calmly. If this is about the eviction, talk to Avery. It is not about the eviction, he hissed. It is the bank. The regional manager just called me. They are doing an emergency audit of the credit line. They said the collateral asset has been flagged as disputed ownership. They froze the line. Scarlett, they froze the operating capital. I leaned against the shelving unit. Well, that happens when you pledge a house you do not own as security for a loan. I have payroll on Friday, he shouted, the panic finally breaking through. I have vendors to pay. Jim Calloway is asking why his corporate card was declined at lunch. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? You are making me look like a fraud in front of my partners. You are a fraud, I said. The words came out easily, without any heat. You listed 442 Lakeview Drive as your asset. You lied on a federal application. I didn't make you look like anything. Dad, I just turned on the lights. It was a formality, he argued. We have lived there for 5 years. It is effectively ours. You are splitting hairs to hurt me. You are ruining my reputation because you are petty. My reputation, I asked, my voice dropping. Dad, I am currently scanning barcodes for $18 an hour because your other daughter paid a man to throw me onto the street. You stole my credit history. You stole my name. And you are worried about Jim Calloway's lunch bill. Fix it, he demanded. Call the bank. Tell them you authorize the use of the property. Tell them it was a clerical error. If you do not, the consulting group goes under. Is that what you want? You want your parents destitute. I want my parents to pay their own bills, I said. And Dad, if you scream at me one more time, I will forward the eviction notice directly to your business partners so they know exactly why the credit line froze. I hung up. I stood there, my heart hammering a slow, heavy rhythm. I waited for the guilt to come. I waited for that old, familiar reflex that told me I was a bad daughter. But it did not come. All I felt was the cool air of the warehouse and the realization that for the first time in my life, I was not the one afraid of the consequences. The second domino fell an hour later. I took a break at 3:30. I sat in my car, eating an apple. I opened my email. There was a notification from a credit monitoring service, but it wasn't mine. It was a shared alert linked to the family plan we had never bothered to decouple. Credit inquiry Ross, Kendra, status denied, reason adverse action/fraud alert on associated profiles. I smiled. Avery's scorched earth policy was working. By disputing the surety bond and flagging the signature as forged, we had triggered a radioactive cloud over Kendra's financial profile. Then, I saw the social media notification. Paul had sent me a screenshot. He refused to engage with them, but he was watching. Kendra had posted on Instagram. It was a black screen with white text, the universal signal for dramatic victimhood. It is funny how the people you support the most are the ones who stab you in the back when you set boundaries. Toxic family members will try to destroy your success just because they are miserable in their own failures. Focusing on my peace today. Self-made toxic family rising above. I stared at the hashtag, self-made, this from a woman who forged her brother-in-law's signature to get a lease and bribed a landlord to hide her debts. I did not comment. I did not react. I simply took a screenshot, dated it, and saved it to the folder named Evidence. Keep talking, I whispered to the screen. Every word you say is another zero on the settlement check. Paul called me at 5:15. He was back in Ohio, finishing his shift. I just got off the phone with the leasing agent for Kendra's retail space, he said. His voice was hard, shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Why did they call you? Because Kendra's payment for this month bounced, Paul said, and since I am the guarantor, they called me for the $5,000. They asked if I wanted to pay by credit card. What did you tell them? I told them to look at the signature on page 11, Paul said. I told them that I have filed an affidavit of forgery and that if they attempt to charge my card, I will sue them for negligence in verification. I told them to call Kendra Ross and tell her the bank is closed. Good, I said. How did it feel? It felt terrible, Paul admitted. It felt like I was ripping my own life apart, but then the agent told me something else. He said Kendra told him to call me. She gave him my number this morning. She told him, call my brother-in-law. He handles the finances. She threw me to the wolves. Scarlett, she knew she didn't have the money, so she tried to force me to pay it. She is drowning, I said. She is grabbing onto anything that floats. Unfortunately for her, we are not floating anymore. We are the rocks. I am done, Paul said. I am done with the nice guy act. Avery sent over the draft for the civil suit against Fenwick. I read it. It is brutal, and I want to sign it. We will sign it together, I promised. But the assault wasn't over. At 7 p.m, as I was driving back to the small motel room I had finally been able to afford with my first paycheck, my mother texted. It was a long block of text, devoid of punctuation, a stream of consciousness designed to overwhelm. Scarlett, I do not understand why you are being so cold. Your father is pacing the floor. He has high blood pressure. You know that this stress is going to kill him. Is that what you want? Do you want to bury your father because of a misunderstanding about a house we all love? We were just trying to protect the asset for the family. Why are you listening to strangers and lawyers instead of your own blood? We miss you. We love you. Please just stop this madness and come home. I read it twice. Come home. They still didn't get it. I had no home. They were living in it. And notice the wording. Protect the asset for the family. Not your house. Not Scarlett's property. To them, everything I owned was communal property, available for harvest whenever they needed it. We miss you, she wrote, but she didn't ask where I was sleeping. She didn't ask if I had eaten. She didn't ask how I was coping with the job loss. She only missed the version of me that paid the bills and kept my mouth shut. I didn't reply. I archived the text. Then came the white flag from the enemy camp. Grady Fenwick sent an email at 8 o'clock. Subject settlement proposal. Confidential. Ms. Ross. I have reviewed the correspondence from your attorney. I believe things have escalated unnecessarily. I am a reasonable man. I want to clarify that my actions were based entirely on the representations made by your sister, Ms. Kendra Ross. She assured me she had your power of attorney and was acting in your best interest due to a medical crisis. I was misled. However, to avoid costly litigation, I am willing to offer a settlement. I will refund your security deposit in full, return the prorated rent for the remainder of the month, and provide a positive letter of reference for your future rental applications. In exchange, you will sign a waiver releasing me from all liability. This is a generous offer. Please consider it. I laughed out loud in the empty motel room. He was terrified. He was trying to frame it as if he was the victim of Kendra's lies. And sure, Kendra had lied. But he had taken the cash. He had bypassed the law. And now he was offering me my own security deposit money that was legally mine anyway, as a generous settlement. He was trying to buy a pardon with my own money. I forwarded the email to Avery with a 2-word note. Reject this. Avery replied 3 minutes later. Already done. I told him our starting number for negotiations is 6 figures. I also told him to preserve his text history with Kendra. He is going to flip on her. Scarlett, watch. Avery was right. The pressure was cooking them alive, and when people cook, they crack. On Thursday morning, the invitation came. It wasn't a text or a call. It was an email from my father's official business account, copied to Kendra, Mom, and Paul. Subject family meeting, Scarlett and Paul. Enough. This has gone too far. We are a family, not a conglomerate of warring states. We need to sit down and resolve this like adults, face to face, without lawyers whispering in our ears. We have booked a table at the Oak Room for Friday at 7 in the evening. Just us. No attorneys, no recording devices, just family. We have a proposal that will satisfy everyone. Please do not turn your back on us. Dad. I stared at the screen. The Oak Room. It was the most expensive steakhouse in town. It was where my father took clients he wanted to impress. It was a power move. He wanted to get me onto his turf, surrounded by waiters and white tablecloths, where he thought I would be too polite to make a scene. He wanted no lawyers. He wanted no recording devices. That was the tell. You only demand no recording devices when you plan to say things you cannot deny later. I called Avery. They want to sit down, I said. Tomorrow night, the Oak Room. Do not go, Avery said instantly. It is an ambush. They will gang up on you. They will use emotional blackmail. They will try to get you to sign something on a napkin. I know, I said. But Avery, they are panicking. Dad's credit is frozen. Kendra is broke. Fenwick is trying to throw them under the bus. If I go, and I just sit there, they are going to talk. They are going to argue with each other. They are going to blame each other. And I will be the one listening. I said. Paul puts his phone on the table, face down. But I have a smart watch. It records voice memos. North Carolina is a one-party consent state for recording conversations, right? It is, Avery confirmed. As long as one person in the conversation knows it is being recorded, it is legal. I am the one person, I said. Avery sighed. Scarlett, this is dangerous. Not physically, maybe, but emotionally. They are going to tear you apart. They already tore me apart, I said. Now I am just going to record the sound of them trying to put me back together wrong. If you go, Avery said, her voice serious, you do not sign anything. You do not agree to anything. You do not accept a check. You listen. You eat their expensive steak. and you walk away. I promise, I said. I called Paul. They want dinner, I said. Friday night. You land at 4. We go at 7. The Oak Room, Paul asked. Seriously, your dad owes 50 grand to the bank, and he is booking the Oak Room. Appearances are everything. Paul, I said. He has to look like he is in charge. Are you up for it? I am not going there to eat, Paul said grimly. I am going there to look your sister in the eye and ask her why she thought I was stupid enough to pay her rent. Good, I said, because that is exactly the question that is going to make her snap. I spent the rest of Thursday preparing. I wasn't preparing a speech. I was preparing my silence. I knew that in a family like mine, the person who speaks the least holds the most power. They would fill the silence with justifications. They would fill it with lies. And eventually, if I let them, they would fill it with the truth. I looked at the mirror in the motel room. The woman staring back at me looked different than the one who had cried in the HR office 10 days ago. Her eyes were harder. Her mouth was set in a line that didn't curve up to please anyone. I wasn't Scarlett the fixer anymore. I wasn't Scarlett the doormat. I was the auditor. And I was coming to check the books. The drive to Rochester took 10 hours. We left Charlotte before dawn, driving through the Blue Ridge Mountains as the sun turned the mist into gold, and then up through the flat, gray expanse of Pennsylvania and into New York. By the time we hit the state line, the trees were bare. The vibrant autumn colors of the South were gone, replaced by the skeletal branches of a northern November. Paul drove the first leg. I drove the second. We barely spoke. There was nothing left to say that the lawyers hadn't already put into affidavits. We were not going there to argue. We were going there to supervise. Technically, under the advice of counsel, we did not have to be there. The sheriff would handle the lockout in 20 days if they were not gone. But my mother had called. She had not screamed. She had not guilt-tripped. She had just whispered, "We are packing. There are things here that belong to Aunt Martha. I do not know what you want to keep." It was a trap, of course, a lure to get me back into the room so they could work on me. But I needed to go. I needed to see them leave. I needed to see the physical act of them vacating my life, or I knew I would never truly believe it was over. We pulled into the gravel driveway of 442 Lakeview Drive at 3 in the afternoon. The sky was a bruised purple, hanging low over Lake Ontario. The water was choppy, gray waves slapping against the breakwall. The house looked the same as it always did, a sturdy 2-story cedar duplex with white trim. It looked peaceful. It looked like the kind of place where a family drank cocoa and played board games. But the driveway told a different story. There was a moving truck parked awkwardly on the lawn, churning up the dormant grass. My father's truck, the one currently the subject of a repossession order, was backed up to the porch. I turned off the ignition. The silence in the car was heavy. "You ready?" Paul asked. He was gripping the door handle, his knuckles white. "No," I said. "Let us go inside." We walked up the steps. The front door was open. The smell hit me first. It was the smell of cardboard, dust, and aggressive cleaning chemicals, the scent of panic. My mother was in the living room. She was wrapping a ceramic vase in newspaper. When she saw me, she stopped. She looked older than she had on FaceTime. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes were swollen. "Scarlett," she said. She didn't move to hug me. She just stood there, holding the vase like a weapon. "You came?" "I came to check the inventory," I said, my voice sounding too loud in the empty room. "Avery sent the list of fixtures that stay with the house. Appliances, light fixtures, blinds. We know the law. Scarlett," my father's voice boomed from the kitchen. Walter Ross walked in. He was wearing his working man flannel, the one he wore when he wanted to project the image of a rugged provider. Even though he had soft hands and a consulting degree, he looked furious. He looked like a king who had been told his castle was actually a rental. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here," he said, pointing a finger at me. "After the humiliation you caused us with the bank, Jim Calloway won't even return my calls. You torched my business. I corrected the record, I said. You torched your business when you built it on fraud. I walked past him into the kitchen. I needed to see the state of the house, and that is when I saw it. On the granite countertop, amidst the chaos of packing boxes, sat a brand new espresso machine. It was a Breville, chrome, shiny, digital display. I knew exactly how much it cost, because I had looked at it online 3 years ago and decided I could not justify the $700 price tag. Next to it was a set of Japanese chef's knives in a walnut block. $500. Easily. I walked to the corner. A new set of golf clubs leaned against the pantry door. The plastic was still on the handles. Callaway. $1,000 minimum. I felt a heat rise in my chest that had nothing to do with the thermostat. When did you buy these? I asked, pointing at the coffee machine. My father stiffened. That is none of your business. I was sleeping in a Toyota Corolla, I said, my voice trembling with a rage so cold it burned. I was eating protein bars and washing my face in a library sink because I had no money, and while I was doing that, you were buying a $700 espresso maker. We have to live, my mother cried out, rushing into the kitchen. Just because you hit a rough patch doesn't mean we have to live like paupers. Your father needs his coffee. He needs his relaxation. He works hard. He works hard at spending my equity, I snapped. You didn't pay rent for 5 years, not one dime. You lived here for free, and instead of saving that money, instead of building a safety net so you wouldn't have to steal my house, you bought toys. We did not steal the house, my father shouted. We improved it. This place was a dump when Martha died. I fixed the gutters. I landscaped the yard. I kept the value up. This house is what it is because of me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the deed. It was a copy, but the seal of Monroe County was clearly visible. This house is what it is because Aunt Martha paid cash for it in 1982, I said, slamming the paper onto the island next to the coffee machine. And it is still standing because I paid the property taxes every September. I paid the insurance. I paid for the new roof 2 years ago when you called me crying that it was leaking. You didn't save this house, Dad. You occupied it. We did it for you, my mother whispered. She was crying now. The practiced, helpless tears that had worked on me for decades. We wanted to keep it nice for you. We are your parents. We sacrificed everything to raise you. And now, over money, over a few pieces of paper, you are kicking us out. I am not kicking you out over paper, I said. I am kicking you out because you tried to bury me. You didn't help me when I fell. Mom, you bribed my landlord to make sure I stayed down. That isn't sacrifice. That is a hit job. Kendra said it was for your own good, my mother wailed. She said you needed a push. Kendra is a liar, Paul said. They both turned. Paul had been standing in the doorway, silent, but now he stepped forward. He wasn't the polite son-in-law anymore. He was a wall of muscle and anger. Kendra isn't just a liar, Paul repeated. She is a thief, as if summoned by her name. The sound of a car door slamming echoed from the driveway. I looked out the window. Kendra's white BMW X5 was parked next to the moving truck. It was gleaming. She stepped out, wearing a camel-colored wool coat that probably cost more than my first car, and oversized sunglasses. She looked like she was arriving for a photo shoot, not a family crisis. She walked into the house without knocking. The click-clack of her heels on the hardwood floor was sharp, aggressive. She stopped in the kitchen doorway, looked at the boxes, looked at our parents, and then looked at me with a look of pure disdain. Well, she said, the demolition crew is here. Are you happy? Scarlett. Mom is crying. Dad is having heart palpitations. Is this the vengeance you wanted? She didn't look at Paul. She refused to make eye contact with him. I am not here for happiness, I said. I am here to make sure you don't steal the copper wiring out of the walls before you leave. Kendra laughed. A short, sharp bark. You are pathetic. You get a little bit of power and you turn into a tyrant. I have lost everything. You know, the bank pulled my financing. The shop is gone. I have to move back into a rental apartment in the city. I lost my status. Scarlett, because of you. You lost your status because you don't pay your bills, Paul said. Kendra finally looked at him. She sneered. Oh, look, the husband speaks. I thought you were just her purse. Paul walked up to her. He was tall, and in that small kitchen, he loomed over her. Kendra took a half step back, her confidence faltering for a fraction of a second. I want to ask you something, Paul said. His voice was very quiet. And I want you to answer me in front of Mom and Dad. I do not have to answer you, Kendra said, checking her nails. The lease guarantee, Paul said. The document you sent me 8 months ago, the one you said was a liability waiver. What about it? Kendra said. Bored. You signed it. You are a grown man. If you didn't read it, that is your problem. I read it, Paul said. I read the first 10 pages. They were about safety protocols. But the 11th page, the one with the signature line that wasn't part of the document, was it? Don't be ridiculous, Kendra scoffed. It was a standard PDF. The font was different, Paul said. The page number formatting was different. You took the signature page from a financial guarantee and you stapled it to the back of a safety waiver. You swapped the pages, Kendra. You are paranoid, Kendra said, rolling her eyes. I sent you a file. You signed the last page. That is how contracts work. I signed the last page of the waiver, Paul said. I didn't sign a guarantee. You signed the page that said guarantor, Kendra snapped. I saw you do it. I watched the DocuSign log. You scrolled right to the bottom and clicked sign on the last page. The room went dead silent. My father looked up from the counter. My mother stopped crying. Paul smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I thought you said you sent me a PDF to print and scan, Paul said. That is what you told the bank. That is what you told Avery, that I physically signed it. Kendra froze. Her eyes darted to the side. But just now, Paul continued, you said you watched the DocuSign log. You said you saw me click, but we never used DocuSign. Kendra, you emailed me a file. I printed it, signed it with a pen, and scanned it back. He took a step closer. So if you saw a DocuSign log, that means you created a digital envelope. It means you took my scanned signature from the waiver and pasted it into a digital DocuSign field on the guarantee. You admitted you manipulated the electronic record. Kendra's mouth opened, then closed. The color drained from her face, leaving her makeup looking like a mask on a corpse. I misspoke, she stammered. I meant, I saw the email come back. No, I said, stepping up beside Paul. You said you watched the log. You gave details. You know what they call that in court? Kendra. A confession. My father slammed his hand on the counter. Enough. Stop trapping your sister with word games. She was trying to start a business. She needed help. Families help each other. Help. I turned on him. You call this help? You call tricking your brother-in-law into $200,000 of debt help? I looked around the kitchen. I looked at the espresso machine. I looked at the view of the lake through the window, the view I had paid for. The view they enjoyed while I was drowning. I gave you this house, I said. My voice shook, not with fear, but with the release of 5 years of silence. For 5 years, I let you live here. I paid the taxes. I paid the insurance. When the water heater broke, I paid for it. When the roof leaked, I paid for it. I didn't ask for rent. I didn't ask for thanks. I just wanted you to be safe. I looked at my mother. And how did you repay me? You didn't just take the house. You took my name. You took my credit. And when I finally, for the first time in my life, needed you, when I needed a bed for 2 weeks, you told me I needed to learn resilience. I pointed at the door. Well, I learned it, I said. I learned that resilience is realizing that the people who say they love you are the ones holding the knife. You are ungrateful, Kendra hissed. You are going to die alone, Scarlett. Because nobody loves a woman who counts every penny. I would rather die alone, I said, than live with people who charge me for the air I breathe. I turned to my father. Leave the espresso machine. It stays with the house. It is a fixture now. I bought that, he shouted. And you bought it with money you got from a credit line secured by my property, I said. So technically, I bought it, leave it, or I call the sheriff right now and report a theft in progress. He stared at me. His face turned purple. He looked like he wanted to hit me, but he didn't. He saw something in my eyes he had never seen before. He saw the landlord. He turned around, grabbed a box of books, and stormed out to the truck. My mother looked at me one last time. You are breaking our hearts, Scarlett. No, Mom, I said. I am just breaking your bank account. There is a difference. She followed him out. Kendra stood there for a moment longer. She adjusted her coat. She tried to summon some of her old arrogance, but the crack in her armor was too wide. Paul's trap had worked. She knew we had her on the fraud. I will see you in court, she muttered. No, you won't, Paul said. You will see your bankruptcy trustee. We will be the ones watching from the gallery. She spun around and marched out, her heels clicking like gunshots. I stood in the kitchen for a long time. The silence came back, but this time, it wasn't the silence of panic. It was the silence of ownership. You okay? Paul asked gently. I don't know, I said. I walked out the back door onto the porch. The air was freezing. The wind off the lake cut through my blazer. But I didn't button it. I wanted to feel the cold. I wanted to feel something real. The lake was vast and dark, churning with whitecaps. It didn't care about my family. It didn't care about credit scores or leases. It just was. I gripped the wooden railing. This was my house. My name was on the deed. But as I watched the taillights of Kendra's BMW fade down the driveway, followed by the lumbering shape of the moving truck, I realized something. I hadn't just evicted my parents. I hadn't just reclaimed a piece of real estate. I had evicted the version of myself that needed their approval to exist. I had evicted the Scarlett who thought love was something you had to purchase with silence and sacrifice. I looked down at my hands. They were raw from the cold, and rough from the warehouse work. They weren't the hands of a manager. They were the hands of a survivor. Paul stepped out onto the porch behind me. He didn't say anything. He just wrapped his arms around me and rested his chin on my shoulder. He was warm. He was solid. And for the first time in months. He wasn't heavy. He wasn't another burden I had to carry. He was standing with me. They are gone, he whispered. Yeah, I said, watching the gray waves crash against the shore. They are gone, but the war wasn't over. The house was empty, but the ledger wasn't balanced. They had left, but they hadn't paid. Avery called while you were in the kitchen, Paul said softly. She set up the meeting, the settlement conference, tomorrow night. The Oak Room, I asked. No, Paul said. She changed the venue. She told them if they want to settle, they come to us. Where? The warehouse, Paul said. Northcrest Outreach, 8 p.m., I smiled. It was a small, cold smile. Perfect, I said. Let them see where I work. Let them see what resilience actually looks like. The warehouse meeting never happened. My father refused. 10 minutes after I sent the location, he replied with a single line, "We are not criminals, and we will not meet in a loading dock. We will meet at Giovanni's at 7:30. If you want peace, you will come to the table." Giovanni's, the Italian restaurant where we had celebrated my high school graduation, the place where we had thrown my parents' 30th anniversary party. It was a tactical choice. He chose a place soaked in nostalgia, a stage set designed to make me feel like an ungrateful child destroying a happy history. Go, Avery said over the speakerphone as Paul and I sat in the restaurant parking lot. But treat it like a deposition. Do not drink the wine. Do not eat the bread. And for the love of God, Scarlett, check every single piece of paper they hand you. If the font size changes, if the margins shift, you stop reading and you leave. We are recording, Paul said, tapping the pocket of his blazer. I check the statutes. As long as one party consents, it is admissible. I consent. Good, Avery said. Listen for the but. They will apologize. And then they will say, but. Whatever comes after that word is the trap. We walked in. The restaurant smelled of garlic and expensive cologne. The maitre d' smiled at us, recognizing Paul, oblivious to the fact that we were walking into a firing squad. They were seated at a round table in the back corner, secluded by a velvet curtain. It was private, too private. My mother was already crying. She held a handkerchief to her nose, dabbing at eyes that were rimmed with red. My father was drinking scotch, his knuckles white around the glass. Kendra sat between them. She wasn't crying. She was typing on her phone, her posture rigid, looking like a CEO waiting to fire a subordinate. When we approached, silence fell over the table like a heavy blanket. "Sit down," my father said. His voice was rough, lacking its usual boom. "Please." Paul pulled out my chair. We sat. We did not unfold our napkins. "I ordered a bottle of the Chianti you like, Scarlett," my mother sniffled. "Remember we drank it at your wedding rehearsal." "I am not drinking, Mom," I said. "Let us skip the wine and get to the proposal." Kendra set her phone down face up. I noticed she had placed it carefully in the center of the table. She was recording too. We were two opposing armies aiming microphones at each other over a plate of calamari. "We want to fix this," my father began. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. The last few days things were said, things were done. We were all emotional, but we cannot let money destroy this family. Jim Calloway is pulling his investment because of the rumors. The bank is threatening to foreclose on the business assets. We are bleeding. Scarlett, you are bleeding because you cut yourselves, Paul said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were fixed on Kendra. "We are offering a reset," Kendra said. Cutting off my father, she reached into her designer tote bag and pulled out a blue folder. She didn't slide it. She placed it in front of me with two hands, precise and heavy. "I have spoken to Grady Fenwick," she said. "He is willing to rescind the bad rental report. He will classify your departure as a mutual lease break. Your record will be clean." "And the money?" I asked. "I have a cashier's check here," she said, tapping the folder. $1,000, plus another $1,500 for your first month's rent at a new place. And," she paused, looking at Paul for the first time, "I will pay the $5,000 for the shop rent this month. I will borrow it from a friend. Paul won't be charged." It sounded perfect. It sounded like a surrender. "What do I have to do?" I asked. "Just sign the truce," Kendra said. She opened the folder. Inside was a 3-page document titled Mutual Release and Settlement Agreement. "It just says that we all agree to drop the lawsuits," Kendra explained. Uncapping a heavy black Mont Blanc pen and holding it out to me, "We drop the harassment claims against you. You drop the eviction and the fraud claims. We walk away clean. No courts, no public records." I looked at the pen. It was expensive. It was weighty. It was designed to make signing feel important, inevitable. "I will read it," I said. "It is standard legal language," my father said impatiently. "Kendra's friend drafted it. He is a contract specialist. It just legalizes what we just said." "I will read it," I repeated. I put on my reading glasses. The room was dim, lit by candlelight, which made reading the dense, single-spaced text difficult. That was intentional, too. I read paragraph 1. Mutual non-disparagement. Fine. I read paragraph 2. Withdrawal of all pending actions. Fine. Then I got to paragraph 4. Section B. The heading was innocuous, reaffirmation of existing obligations. I read the text. Then I read it again. My heart stopped, then restarted with a violent thud against my ribs. In consideration of the settlement payments described herein, the undersigned Scarlett Ross and Paul Henry hereby acknowledge and reaffirm the validity of all prior guarantees, surety bonds, and co-signatory agreements previously executed, whether by physical or digital means, and agree to indemnify Kendra Ross and Walter Ross against any future default claims arising from said agreements. Effective retroactively to the date of origination. I looked up. My blood was ice cold. Reaffirm the validity, I whispered. What? Paul asked, leaning in. It is a trap, I said, my voice rising. This isn't a release, it is a confession. I spun the paper around and stabbed my finger at paragraph 4. If I sign this, I said, looking at Kendra, I am admitting that the forged signatures are real. I am reaffirming them, and this part, indemnify against future default. That means if you stop paying rent next month, Paul and I can't sue you. We agree to cover it. We agree to take the fall. You are reading it wrong, Kendra said quickly. Her hand twitched toward the paper. It just means we go back to status quo. Status quo. Paul grabbed the paper. He read the line. His face turned red. You are trying to trick us into accepting the debt. You are trying to make the forgery legal. We are offering you cash, my father shouted, slamming his hand on the table. Take the $2,500 and sign the damn paper. Why do you have to complicate everything? Because $2,500 is cheaper than $200,000, I yelled back. You think I am stupid? You think because I work in a warehouse now, I forgot how to read a contract. Who wrote this? Paul asked. He held up the document. You said a friend. Who? It doesn't matter, Kendra snapped. It is a standard template. Who? Paul demanded. Because this isn't standard. This is predatory. This is specific. It uses the phrase, digital means, to cover your ass for the DocuSign fraud. Who wrote it? Marcus? Kendra blurted out. Marcus Vane. Okay, he wrote it. The name hung in the air. Marcus Vane. Paul let out a low whistle. Marcus Vane, the guy who got disbarred 3 years ago for mortgage fraud. The guy who runs that shady credit repair service downtown. He is a consultant, Kendra said defensively. He knows the law. He knows how to break it, I said. So that is your strategy. You hire a disbarred lawyer to draft a settlement that tricks your sister into assuming your debts. I closed the folder. I didn't give it back. I slid it into my bag. That stays with me, I said. This is evidence of attempted extortion. Give it back. Kendra lunged across the table. Her fingernails grazed my hand. Sit down. Paul stood up, his voice booming through the restaurant. Other diners turned to look. The maitre d' took a step forward but stopped when he saw Paul's face. Kendra sank back into her chair. She was shaking. Why? I asked. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Kendra, the guarantee is one thing, but the eviction, the email to Fenwick where you called me unstable. Why were you so desperate to get me out of that house right then? Why that specific week? I told you, she muttered. I needed you to hit rock bottom. No, I said. That is the story you tell yourself, but it doesn't fit. You paid $1,000. You risked a felony. You don't do that for a life lesson. You do that because you are scared. I leaned in. What is at the house? Kendra. What is at 442 Lakeview Drive? Nothing, she shrieked. It is just a house. Is it the mail? I pressed. Is it a package? Did you have something sent there? Stop it, she screamed. I found the credit line Dad took out. I said, but that was 6 months ago. That doesn't explain the rush last week. What happened last week? Kendra. I needed the address, she shouted. The words tore out of her throat. I needed the address to be clear. The room went silent. Clear of what? I asked softly. Kendra looked at Mom. Mom looked down at her lap. I applied for the Small Business Relief Grant, Kendra whispered. Her voice was trembling. The federal one. For the shop. And I didn't qualify, she said. My income was too high last year. But if I showed a secondary residence, if I showed I was supporting a dependent property, I qualified for the hardship bracket. $50,000. Forgivable. I stared at her. You applied for a federal hardship grant. I used the duplex address, she said. Tears finally spilling over. I listed it as my satellite office, but the auditor, the grant auditor, emailed me. He said he was going to do a physical verification check. He said he was going to mail a confirmation code to the address to verify occupancy. I sat back. The pieces clicked together like the tumblers of a lock. The auditor was sending a code, I said. To my house. If you were there, Kendra said, you would have seen the letter. You would have opened it. You would have asked why the government was sending a grant code to your house for my business. And if you told the auditor you lived there, and that it wasn't my office, I would go to jail, federal jail. So you paid Fenwick to kick me out, I said. You wanted the house empty so you could intercept the mail. You wanted me homeless so I wouldn't be there when the letter arrived. I was going to give you the money back, Kendra sobbed. Once the grant cleared, I just needed 2 weeks. I just needed the house to be empty so I could grab the letter. You made your sister homeless, Paul said, his voice shaking with disgust, to hide $50,000 of grant fraud. I had to, Kendra cried. I spent the money before it arrived. I bought inventory if I didn't get the grant. I was insolvent. My father sat there, staring at his scotch. He knew. The look on his face told me he knew. He had let her do it. He had watched me sleep in a car so his golden child could steal $50,000 from the government. I stood up. My legs felt steady, strong. You are right about one thing, Kendra, I said. I did need a push. I needed to see exactly who you people are. I looked at my mother. She was weeping into her napkin. But I felt nothing. No pity, no guilt. The recording, I said, pointing to Paul's pocket. It is clear. It picked up everything. The admission of the grant fraud, the admission of the forgery, the admission of the bribe. Kendra's face went white. You can't use that. This is a private dinner. Paul consented, I said. And you admitted to federal crimes. I don't need to sue you. Kendra, I just need to forward this audio file to the Small Business Administration. Scarlett, please, my father begged. He reached for my hand. Do not destroy her. She is your sister. I pulled my hand away. She isn't my sister, I said. She is a liability, and I'm closing the account. I grabbed my bag. Paul stood up beside me. We are leaving, I said. Do not contact us. Do not come to the warehouse. Do not send Marcus Vane to write us letters. Where are you going? Mom cried. Scarlett, wait. I turned back one last time. I am going to get a good night's sleep, I said, because tomorrow morning I have a meeting with Avery, and I think she's going to be very interested to hear about the grant. We will see you in court, Paul said. No, I corrected him. We will see you in the indictment. We walked out of the restaurant. The air outside was cool and clean, scrubbing the scent of garlic and lies from my skin. I took Paul's hand. We didn't run. We walked to the car, got in, and drove away, leaving them sitting in the candlelight with their expensive wine and their ruined lives. The conference room at the Mediation Center in downtown Charlotte was sterile. It smelled of floor wax and expensive anxiety. On one side of the long mahogany table sat my parents, Kendra, and a lawyer who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. On the other side sat Paul, Avery, and me. And at the head of the table sat the mediator, a retired judge with a face carved out of granite. Grady Fenwick was there too, sitting separately, sweating through his shirt. He looked small. He looked like a man who realized he had brought a knife to a drone strike. We are here to discuss the settlement of the civil claims filed by Ms. Scarlett Ross, the mediator said, his voice dry. Let us begin with the eviction. Fenwick's lawyer cleared his throat. My client maintains that the lease termination was a mutual agreement facilitated by the tenant's sister. Acting as an agent, Mr. Fenwick was under the impression that Mrs. Ross was incapacitated. Avery didn't even look up from her laptop. She just pressed a key on the large screen mounted on the wall. The email from Kendra appeared. It was blown up, pixelated but legible. Subject regarding Unit 4B, from Kendra Ross, to Grady Fenwick. Grady, here is the cash we discussed. As agreed, Please initiate the termination immediately. My sister Scarlett is going through a severe mental health crisis. Removing her is the only way. That is the narrative, Avery said calmly. Now, let us look at the timeline. She clicked again. The security footage from the parking lot played. The timestamp read 8:08 in the evening. Kendra's BMW, the envelope passing from her hand to Fenwick's. Mr. Fenwick, Avery said, turning to him. At 8:08, you accepted an envelope. Can you tell us what was inside? Fenwick looked at his lawyer. His lawyer looked at the table. It was cash, Fenwick whispered. How much? Avery asked. $1,000, Fenwick said. And 4 minutes later, Avery continued, you knocked on my client's door and told her she had 72 hours to vacate. You did not file this eviction with the court. You did not provide 30 days' notice. You accepted a cash bribe to perform an illegal lockout. I was told she was dangerous, Fenwick blurted out. I was trying to protect the building. You were protecting your wallet, Avery said. And in doing so, you violated the North Carolina Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act. That carries a penalty of treble damages. Plus, you admitted to tax fraud in an email to my client when you offered her $2,000 to stay quiet. Fenwick went pale. He slumped in his chair. He knew it was over. His license, his reputation, his business. It was all smoke. My client is willing to settle with Mr. Fenwick, Avery said, sliding a document across the table. For the sum of $15,000, immediate payment, and a formal retraction of the negative rental report, or we go to trial, and you lose your license. Fenwick signed it. His hand was shaking so badly he tore the paper. Then, Avery turned her attention to the other side of the table. Now, she said. The family. Kendra sat rigid. She was wearing a black suit, trying to look composed, but her eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal. We deny the allegations of fraud, Kendra's lawyer began. The signature on the guarantee was... Stop, Avery said. She didn't shout. She just held up a small USB drive. We have the audio recording from the dinner at Giovanni's last night. The lawyer froze. He looked at Kendra. You met with them. Without me. Kendra didn't answer. She was staring at the USB drive. In this recording, Avery said, her voice echoing in the quiet room, Ms. Kendra Ross admits to two things. First, that she manipulated a digital document to attach Mr. Paul Henry's signature to a financial guarantee he never saw. That is forgery in the second degree. She paused to let that sink in. And second, Avery continued, she admits that the reason she bribed Mr. Fenwick to evict my client was to ensure the residence was empty so she could intercept a federal grant verification code. She admits to applying for $50,000 in relief funds using a fraudulent address. The mediator looked up sharply. Federal funds. Yes, Your Honor. Avery said. The Small Business Administration. That is wire fraud. That is federal. Kendra's lawyer closed his folder. He physically closed it. It was the universal legal sign for I cannot help you anymore. I didn't mean it, Kendra stammered. I was just desperate. Desperation is a motive. Kendra, not a defense, I said. It was the first time I had spoken. My voice was calm, steady, and unrecognizable from the woman who had begged for a room 2 weeks ago. Avery turned to my parents. And Mr. and Mrs. Ross, she said. We have the bank audit. You secured a $50,000 credit line using the deed to 442 Lakeview Drive. You represented to the bank that you owned the property. You do not? My father looked at the table. We have lived there for 5 years. We treated it like ours. But it is not yours, Avery said. And now the bank knows that they are calling the loan. You have 30 days to pay it back. And since you do not have the cash, they will likely move to seize your other assets, your retirement account, your car. The room was silent. The air was heavy with the weight of consequences. So, Avery said, clasping her hands, here is the offer. She slid a thick document across the table toward Kendra and my parents. 1. The eviction stands. You vacate the duplex in Rochester within 7 days. The keys will be turned over to a property manager of Scarlett's choosing. 2. Paul is immediately released from the commercial lease guarantee. Kendra, you will liquidate your shop inventory to pay off the arrears. If that is not enough, you will declare personal bankruptcy, but Paul's name comes off today. 3. A settlement payment of $60,000 to Scarlett Ross for damages, emotional distress, and legal fees. You will sell your jewelry, your car, or whatever you have to sell to raise it. 60,000, my mother cried. We don't have that. Then you shouldn't have spent 5 years living rent-free and buying espresso machines while your daughter slept in a car. I said, figure it out. They signed. They didn't scream. They didn't argue. They signed because they had no choice. The alternative was an indictment. The alternative was prison. When the meeting broke up, I walked out into the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Kendra followed me. She looked wrecked. Her makeup was smudged, and that air of invincibility she had worn like armor for 30 years was gone. Are you happy? She asked. Her voice was brittle. You destroyed us. Mom and Dad are going to lose their retirement. I am going to lose my business. Are you satisfied? I stopped and turned to face her. I looked at my sister, the woman who had mocked me, used me, and then thrown me away the moment I became inconvenient. I am not happy, Kendra, I said. Happiness is a luxury. I am safe. That is what I needed. I needed to know that my life belongs to me, not to you. I offered you money, she whispered. I offered to fix it. You offered me $1,000, I said. You thought that was the price of my dignity. But you forgot one thing. What? She asked. $1,000 can buy a lot of things, I said. But it cannot buy the right to decide who I am. You paid to kick me out. I paid to take my life back. Keep the change. I walked away. I didn't look back. 2 days later, I received an email. It wasn't from a lawyer. It was from a recruiter I had spoken to during my days working at the warehouse. Subject: job offer. Silver Motive Solutions. Dear Scarlett, we were incredibly impressed with your resilience and your ability to manage complex logistics under pressure at Northcrest. We are looking for a director of operations. Remote role. Full benefits. Starting salary $110,000 a year. We think you are exactly the kind of fighter we need. I stared at the screen. $110,000. Remote. I accepted it within 5 minutes. The settlement check from the family came 3 weeks later. $60,000. It drained their accounts. My parents had to move into a small one-bedroom apartment in Florida, far away from the country clubs they pretended to belong to. Kendra moved into a studio apartment and took a job as a receptionist at a dental office. Paul and I used the money to pay off our debts. We cleared the credit cards, we fixed the car, and we put the rest into a savings account that no one else could touch. We moved back into the duplex in Rochester. We didn't sell it. We kept it. The first night we slept there, it felt strange. The house was quiet. The ghosts of my parents' entitlement were gone. Scrubbed away by professional cleaners and a fresh coat of paint, I stood on the back porch, looking out at Lake Ontario. The water was calm, reflecting the moon. Paul came out and stood beside me, handing me a mug of tea. It is over, he said softly. No, I said, leaning into him. It is just beginning. We had drawn a line in the sand, and for the first time, we were standing on the right side of it. We weren't the safety net anymore. We were the builders. My sister tried to break me for $1,000. Instead, she reminded me that I was priceless, and that is a lesson I will keep for free. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I know it was intense, but I hope it reminded you that your worth is not negotiable. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please leave a comment telling me where you are listening from. I love reading your stories from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to Juliet Revenge Stories. Like the video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people.